In that life-or-death moment, he broke through to silver rank. I praised him, delighted by the unexpected gain. Ika reported that they hid in the brush outside the grounds for a full day and night. Runestone City has about 400 soldiers. They are well-equipped, but lack morale. Sabuda is forcibly conscripting all able-bodied men, using brutal methods. His forces will likely reach 500 soon. I calculated my own strength: 350 veterans, 40 Black Raven Knights, and 200 new recruits under Buck, totaling 600. With Buck, a gold-tier knight, and superior quality, I felt confident. Ika added that the city is filled with resentment. Even with Count Aldis's promised 200 private soldiers, they only have 700. Adding the Federation remnants from Poison Scorpion Canyon, they might muster 1,000. 1,000 sounds like a lot, but to storm the Obsidian territory? I looked at my 5-meter-tall, stone-reinforced walls. Sieges aren't won by numbers alone. Without a massive numerical advantage in siege engines, attacking is suicide, even if the three parties combine their forces. Taking a fortress with 600 defenders, a gold-tier knight, and strong terrain is nearly impossible. The conclusion was clear. Sabuda likely intends to lure me into an open-field battle, or his target is Lucerne City. With only 200 defenders under Noland, it is a strategic hub. If Lucerne falls, the Obsidian territory becomes isolated. A clever plan, I mused. I still awaited word from the Marquis, so I had to prepare for both scenarios. I decided to warn Noland to recruit 200 more men and heighten vigilance. I praised Ika for his success, granting him a holiday and a reward of 5 gold coins each for his men. I looked at my longtime subordinate. Ika confirmed he had followed me since I was named an expansion knight. I acknowledged his loyalty and the value of the intel. I appointed Ika as the chief of intelligence for the Black Territory, reporting directly to me. Ika was overwhelmed with honor and responsibility. He knelt and pledged his life to the task. I noted that Sabuda's scouts had infiltrated too easily, while my own men nearly died. I realized I had relied too much on the Apocalypse information system, which was passive and unpredictable. A real-world network of loyal eyes and ears was essential. Ika's department was the first step in fixing this weakness. I sent the warning to Nolan via Machio. "Sabuda, you have taught me a lesson," I whispered. Bang! A gauntlet fist slammed into the oak desk. "How dare he?" Marquis Marcus Hohenzollern roared, his study shaking. He stared at the letter on his desk. "Colluding with rebels. Selling out the West. Damn the Medici. Damn Sabuda. Like father, like son. Always playing these dark, treacherous games. Does he think the West is his personal tool?" Sir Lucius Laroche remained calm as the Marquis ranted, taking the letter with steady fingers. "Marquis Marcus," Lucius said, his voice flat. "If this is true, this Sabuda Medici is a ruthless man indeed." I stroked the letter, a faint, imperceptible smile touching my lips. Marcus panted, chest heaving. "Sir Lucius, Eli lacks ironclad proof, but the rumors are persistent. I request immediate mobilization. Thorn City must be investigated. If we allow this, the western border's defenses become a farce, and anyone can collude with the enemy." Lucius ignored the outburst, asking casually, "Does the Hohenzollern family have any unmarried noblewomen of age?" Marcus's rage stalled, replaced by wary suspicion. "Sir Lucius, what are you planning? My only niece is already betrothed to the second son of the Aldis family. It's settled. Don't target her." "A pity," Lucius replied calmly. "If my intel is true, and we seize this chance to excise Sabuda Medici and his Federation remnants, then I, aided by us, will no longer be a mere footnote on the border." Lucius's gaze deepened. "By repelling the siege and seizing the spoils of Thorn City, my power will swell. I will become the true lord of the Southwest." He paused, locking eyes with Marcus. "Power is neither good nor evil. It depends on who holds it and whether it is controllable." Marcus frowned. "You mean?" "Marriage," Lucius smiled. "The most effective tool. Bind uncontrollable power through blood to bring it into our system. I claim eternal loyalty to the West, don't I? Let me prove it through marriage." Marcus twitched. "Sir Lucius, you truly are a man of the royal capital." He suppressed his thoughts. "Who is the candidate?" "The Count of Hullen has no suitable daughters. and the Marquis of Rodrigo's daughter would look down on a mere baron. Other families. Lucius cut him off. A collateral branch of the Laroche family has a girl, Miss Laroche. 18, refined, and unmarried. What? Marcus was stunned. A Laroche. Sir, you mean a woman of the Duke's bloodline? Even a collateral branch is still a Laroche. Isn't that too heavy a price for a mere baron? A Duke's relative marrying a new baron was unheard of. This wasn't just an alliance. It was a massive favor, signaling Lucius's immense regard for me. Lucius turned to the gray sky over Thorn City. Marquis Marcus, he said softly. I can no longer see the kingdom's future beneath the current vortex. Marcus was struck by the implication. Civil war in the capital? Lucius looked back. Eli is the same age as Constantine. We are growing old. Perhaps making him a future pillar for Constantine is the right choice. Marcus was speechless, overwhelmed by the implications. The capital's clouds, the succession plans, and the gamble on me pointed toward a terrifying future. He took a breath. I'm not old yet, sir. I can still fight for the West. But this hinges on my intel. Sabuda's treason is the line. Without proof, we have no cause for war or marriage. Proof will come, Lucius said. Issue a secret order in my name. Send a squad of Golden Lion Knights to the southwest. If the anomalies in Thorn City are real, have them assist Baron Eli and follow my command. The Golden Lion Knights. Marcus trembled. This was the Laroche family's elite force. Their presence would be the final blow to Sabuda. Understood. Marcus strode out. Meanwhile, in Lucerne City, the governor's study was ablaze with light. Brandon read the urgent raven-sent letter from me, his brow furrowed. Boar, he shouted. The burly man entered. My lord, are we going to war? Who do we fight? Brandon handed him the letter. Who? Someone is coming to fight us. Boar's excitement vanished as he read. Thorn City, Sabuda, and the Federation? 3 sides? What do we do? The Lord orders Lucerne City into a state of war. Brandon declared. Boar, recruit 200 new soldiers immediately. Strong, agile men. Tell them it's to defend our home. Good pay, rewards after the war. You have 2 days to organize and train them. Yes, sir. Boar rushed out. Wait. Brandon added. Be quick, but don't cause a riot. We are defenders, not invaders. Understood. Brandon stood alone, looking at the dark city, the weight of the situation pressing down. Thorn City, the Earl, and the Federation were closing in like a noose. They had to be ready. He began writing orders. Fortify walls, check the armory, conscript labor, store grain, and enforce a curfew. My 2 cities were now the center of the storm. In the Black Territory, the atmosphere was bizarre. I stared at my desk, where a round marmot named Galoo was sitting on my scrolls, munching on bread larger than its head. Delicious, it squeaked. Eli, you're the best. Better than the princess. I'm staying with you. My eye twitched. I tried to remain calm. Great Galoo. Why have you graced my Black Territory instead of staying with the princess in the sanctuary? Galoo stopped chewing, its nose wrinkling with indignation. The princess? She has a new pet. She doesn't like me anymore. She abandoned me. I struggled to suppress the urge to grab Galoo. Why did the princess ignore you? Galoo slammed his half-eaten bread down. I kindly grilled her fish, and she spat it out. She even lied that it was good. She's changed. She must have another pet. Galoo sobbed theatrically. I pointed out, is your cooking even edible? Galoo bristled, but his confidence withered under my deadpan stare. Maybe it was just bad. She doesn't hate me, right? Possibly. I nodded, desperate to be rid of the creature. Since you're full, shouldn't you return? Isn't the princess lonely in the sanctuary? Galoo tilted his head, confused by the word. She's always been alone, practicing, watching stars, staring at the lake. She's done this for centuries. Why would she be lonely? Centuries alone. A strange, sharp pang of emotion struck me. I envisioned a solitary, immortal figure in that cold sanctuary. No, I said softly. Every life feels loneliness. Elves are no exception. To Queen Irene, you aren't just a pet. You are her partner, her family, the only companion in her long existence. You are important to her. Family. Galoo's eyes lit up like stars, his grievances vanishing. He jumped up, waving his paws excitedly. Exactly. I'm her family. The most important one. She must miss me. I'm going back. As Galoo prepared to jump, I felt a sudden, desperate urge to see Irene again. I needed a pretext, gold. Yes, to thank her for her help. I have matters to discuss with her, I said. I'll accompany you. Gulu agreed instantly. Bring all the good snacks. And anything new. Let her know it's from me. I sighed, amused by the marmot's audacity. Fine. I ordered Esther to prepare a box. Soon, a rattan box filled with the Black Territory's best candied fruits and dried meats was ready. Feeling something was missing, I went to Scholar Alva. I need a book, I said. Something detailed on the history of the Orlando Kingdom, early era, involving elves or ancient city-states. Alva handed me a worn, heavy tome, The Rise and Fall of the Orlando Kingdom. It covers the Roderick LaRoche era extensively. This will do. I took the book, pushing aside the thought of why I cared if she would like it. I and the jubilant Gulu set off for the Nightsong Forest. Valerian emerged from the lake, opening the passage routinely. Gulu led the way to the Jade Gate. Gulu pressed a hidden rune. The gate slid open. Princess, your family is back. Gulu scurried inside, I following close behind. Irene sat before the throne, as if frozen in time. She looked at Gulu, then her gaze turned icy upon me. Did you not say, she asked, her voice ethereal, that you would never return? Gulu froze, then pointed at the food box. I kept my word. I'm just here to help you deliver these gifts. I placed the box on a table. A small offering from the Obsidian Territory, Princess. Gulu opened the box, boasting about his choices. Irene's eyes shifted to the book in my hand. I bowed slightly. I heard you might be interested in history. This is the rise and fall of the Orlando Kingdom, detailing the Roderick LaRoche era. Perhaps you might find it worth reading. Irene stared at the book for a long silence. Finally, she looked away, signaling acceptance. Leave. I turned and departed immediately. Inside, Irene took the cake and petted Gulu, but as the gate closed, her brow furrowed in a flicker of uncharacteristic agitation. The Obsidian Territory camp fell silent, save for the wind howling against the new walls. The gates were barred, and patrols were doubled. I stood on the balcony, surveying the tension. I had recruited 150 slaves as a logistics team. They would handle supplies, fire oil, and wounded, supporting the front line. Brandon had successfully recruited 200 men in Lucerne City, putting it on high alert. A purple light had just delivered vital intel. Purple, Sabuda Medici, Count Aldous' confidant, and Commander Coffees will meet in 3 days at midnight in the Grey Crow Forest to finalize their plan. Grey Crow Forest. I marked the map. Evidence delivered right to my doorstep. I began calculating how to infiltrate, how to secure proof without alerting them. A direct assault was too risky. Knock, knock. A guard interrupted my thoughts. Lord, a cavalry unit is at the gate. They're wearing golden armor, the Golden Lion Knights of the LaRoche family. They demand to see you. I rose instantly. I reached the wall and saw nearly 100 knights in gleaming dark gold plate armor, mounted on massive, armored warhorses. The Golden Lion Knights, composed of the LaRoche family's elite and the most gifted commoners. They were the ultimate symbol of the LaRoche family's military might. The soldiers stood in silent formation. The occasional snort of a horse or the faint clink of armor sounded more ominous than a roaring army. I steadied my nerves, suppressing my shock, and spoke aloud. I am Eli Black, Baron of Lucerne. To what do I owe the honor of the Golden Lion Knights visiting Obsidian Territory? A knight at the front, his helmet adorned with golden lion plumes, rode forward. He lifted his visor to reveal a stern, middle-aged face, his gaze sweeping over me on the wall. Baron Black, he announced, his voice booming. I am Ron Hohenzollern, captain of the Golden Lion Knights' 3rd Squad. Acting on secret orders from Sir Lucius, we are here to assist you in purging Federation rebels. Hohenzollern, a relative of Marquis Marcus? I wondered. Assisting? I feigned confusion. Captain Ron, this is a military matter. Do you have official documentation? Ron frowned slightly. Baron, as these are secret orders, there is no public paperwork. These are Sir Lucius's direct commands. He looked at the walls, raising his voice. Surely there are soldiers from the western border here. Several men on the wall cried out in excitement, confirming the authenticity of the armor and the Golden Lion crest. It's true, my lord. I saw them while serving in Thorn City. That aura and equipment, it can't be faked. My lord, No one in the West would dare impersonate the Golden Lion Knights, the veteran soldiers insisted with reverence. I hesitated no longer. Open the gates. Welcome the warriors of the Golden Lion. The gates groaned open, and the golden tide flowed into the valley. I greeted them personally. Ron Hohenzollern dismounted with disciplined grace, followed by his men, whose heavy armor clattered against the ground. Captain Ron, welcome to Obsidian territory, I said, extending my hand. Ron removed his gauntlet, revealing a calloused hand, and shook mine firmly. He scrutinized the young, white-haired Baron, searching for something behind my calm facade. Baron Black, I have heard much of you, Ron said steadily. By order of Sir Lucius and Marquis Marcus, the third squad is at your disposal to purge the rebels. However, he added, his expression hardening, my uncle, the Marquis, specifically tasked me with verifying the situation. Verifying? I gestured toward the keep. You've had a long journey. Let us eat first. We can discuss verification once you've recovered your strength. Upon hearing the mention of food, the stern expressions of the knights softened. Thank you, Baron. I provided the best rations available, including ale. For men who had been eating dry field rations, this was a feast, and the atmosphere relaxed significantly. The knights ate with disciplined silence, their tension visibly dissipating. After the meal, Ron went to the keep to find me, as I was studying a large map of the West. Ron recalled his uncle's parting words. This is your chance, Ron. If you prove Sabuda is colluding with rebels and manage to capture or kill them, it will be a great merit. With my influence, a barony is within reach. Also, that Eli Black is not simple. Build a relationship with him. Sir Lucius thinks highly of him. Build a relationship. Ron pondered as he looked at the young Baron. I turned with a calm smile. Rest well, Captain? Very well, thank you. Ron looked at the map. Are you planning a strategy? I pointed to a new mark. I will be direct, Captain. The evidence you need is right here. Ron stared at the mark. Grey Crow Forest? You mean? My scouts have confirmed it, I said firmly. 2 nights from now, at midnight, the leaders of all 3 factions will meet here to finalize their attack on our territories and exchange supplies. The room fell silent. Ron's pupils contracted. 3 factions? This was no mere band of rebels. It was a conspiracy to throw the Southwest into chaos. If true, this was the evidence needed to condemn Sabuda Medici for treason. Ron looked skeptical. The Marquis told me there were only 2 factions. I smiled mysteriously. No, Captain, there are 3. Ron felt a surge of excitement. This was his golden opportunity. A merit that would make his name ring throughout the West was within his grasp. Is the intelligence reliable? Ron's voice was strained with excitement, though he tried to remain composed. My intelligence chief led the team to verify it personally, I stated confidently. Ron looked at my calm blue eyes and the mark on the map. Sir Lucius's favor, his uncle's hints. And now, this intelligence that could reshape the West and his own destiny. He decided to trust. Ron straightened his back and struck his chest plate. Baron, the 3rd squad, 96 knights, awaits your command. I circled the mark on the map. Captain Ron, I said clearly, I want you to take your most elite scouts. Follow my intelligence chief, Ika, to the forest. Your only task is to gather evidence of their meeting. Ron frowned, his pride stung. Baron, I respect your judgment, but why be so cautious? We have the entire Golden Lion squad here. Why not launch a lightning strike and capture them all now? Why wait? Capture them all? I met Ron's gaze with a faint smile. Captain, Sabuda hasn't survived this long through brute force alone. He has highly skilled scouts of his own. If a large force approaches the forest, we will inevitably be spotted by his sentries. If we act prematurely, they will cancel the meeting, leaving us empty-handed and exposed. Once they are on high alert, catching them in the act will be impossible. Besides, do you think they'd bring their entire force to a meeting? Even if we ambushed them in Grey Crow Forest, we'd only capture a few leaders and guards. The main forces in Runestone City and the Scaspin rebels would remain. We'd be cutting off the snake's head while its body continues to strike. They might even become more erratic and dangerous. We would face total chaos. Ron's bloodlust faded into gravity. He realized he had been blinded by the prospect of a quick victory. He wasn't a fool. My analysis made the risks of a direct assault clear. I raised my voice. with the Golden Lion Knights added to our strength, and their conspiracy exposed, my goal is not just to capture a few heads. I want to force their main forces out of their fortified cities and canyons, I said, stabbing the map. We will annihilate them on the battlefield. Ron gasped, his pupils contracting. Even a veteran like him was stunned by my massive ambition and ruthlessness. This wasn't just about stopping a plot. It was about uprooting all potential enemies in the southwest border. He finally understood the scale of my vision. He now understood why someone as unfathomable as Sir Lucius held this young baron in such high regard. A surge of long-dormant battle spirit rushed through Ron. Realizing the potential for a monumental achievement, he stood tall and struck his breastplate. My lord, your plan is magnificent. Ron Hohenzollern and the Golden Lion Knights' third squad will serve as your vanguard. We depart immediately to map their plans. I nodded, my eyes sharp. As Ron left, I stood alone before the map, staring toward Thorn City. The Golden Lion Knights were a powerful, yet double-edged, reinforcement. I knew Sir Lucius too well to believe this was a simple favor. Even if Sabuda crossed a line, the Western Border Governor wouldn't lend such core forces to a minor baron without reason. The price for this aid would be heavy. This was another reason I opposed a premature strike. I needed to leverage this force to secure my own interests. Sir Lucius, I murmured, tapping the table. What is it you truly want? In the Runestone City study, Ragnar paced, his face etched with anxiety and rage. He stopped and glared at Sabuda Medici, who sat behind the desk with chilling composure. Sabuda, Ragnar growled. Partnering with the greedy Count Aldous is dangerous enough, but why provoke the poisoned scorpion? Do you have any idea what you're doing? He lowered his voice, his words sharp as blades. This is treason. If exposed, you will face the wrath of the entire western border and the Orlando Kingdom. Even Duke Harkson won't be able to protect you. The Medici family will disown you immediately. You will be crucified as a traitor. Sabuda remained unmoved. No one will know, Ragnar. Never. Ragnar stared at him, stunned, as if seeing his lord for the first time. No one will know? You mean, after it's done, you intend to eliminate the poisoned scorpion and Count Aldis's men? Sabuda's silence was his answer. Ragnar felt a wave of profound disappointment and helplessness. He leaned against the cold stone wall, his voice heavy with grief. Sabuda, you've become a stranger to me. Why hide this? Do you think Count Aldis is a fool? Or the poisoned scorpion? Do you think Sir Lucius and Marquis Marcus are blind? You treat everyone like disposable pawns. But Sabuda, you are the one who thinks he's clever, only to lose everything in the end. Changed. Sabuda set down his ring and stood up. He walked over and pressed his hands onto Ragnar's shoulders, forcing him into a chair. Yes, I have changed, Sabuda said firmly. In the ruins of Shadow Valley, you told me I must change to survive. I listened. I took Runestone City. I became a baron. And now, if we swallow Eli Black's assets, do you know how our power will grow? The wealth of the Black territory in Lucerne, plus the resources of Easton, Clive, and Frost. Combined with Runestone City, we will become the undisputed masters of the Southwest. With such military and resources, we will have a foothold even in the royal capital. This is no longer a minor skirmish. This is the path to true rise. Ragnar felt a chill as he looked at the burning ambition in Sabuda's eyes. You are gambling. Exactly, Sabuda admitted with paranoid confidence. I am gambling that my plan is flawless. I am gambling that Eli won't react in time, that Lucius and Marcus are distracted, and that Aldous and the poisoned scorpion are fools I can discard. I believe fate will stand with Sabuda Medici this time. Ragnar watched the young lord, ambitious, ruthless, and fanatical. He had become a true Medici. The family crest of a viper coiled around gold coins flashed in Ragnar's mind, along with their core motto, toss the coins. Either win it all or fall into the abyss. Ragnar sighed, knowing he couldn't stop this madness. He could only pray that the goddess of fate would favor this mad gambler. Or, before the coins landed and everything collapsed, he would have to find a way out for himself and the innocent people of Runestone City. His hand hovered over his sword hilt before he let it go. Time passed, and the Grey Crow forest fell into a deathly silence. On the edge of a clearing, deep within the woods, several figures perched in the gnarled branches of ancient trees. They remained motionless, blending into the darkness. Then, faint footsteps broke the silence. Torchlight flickered from 3 directions like ghost fires, drifting into the clearing. The first to appear came from the southwest. A group of rugged, mismatched men gathered around a towering, hulking figure. The man wore worn scale armor, his face marred by a centipede-like scar running from his left brow to his right jaw. He grinned, revealing jagged, yellow teeth. "Ha! Long time no see. You know I, Coffees, am a man of my word." It was Coffees, the poison scorpion, leader of the Scaspin remnants. From the shadows emerged a disciplined unit led by a hooded, slender man, Salota Medici. He pulled back his hood, his expression calm. "Punctuality is appreciated, Coffees. Let's finish this quickly." Coffees waved a hand dismissively. "Agreed, Baron." A final, small group of 6 or 7 cloaked figures arrived. Their leader, slightly hunched but steady-footed, stepped into the light and removed his hood, revealing the stern, well-groomed face of an elderly man. High above in the trees, Ron's breath hitched. He recognized that face instantly. Winter, the trusted steward and core advisor to Count Aldous of the western border. Ron's knuckles turned white as he gripped his gauntlets. Winter's presence proved that Count Aldous was not just aware of the conspiracy, but an active participant. If the Count was involved, did that mean Marquis Marcus, the western border's supreme commander, was also a traitor? Ron's ragged breathing betrayed his agitation, instantly noticed by Aika. Aika reacted instantly, clamping a hand over Ron's mouth and nose. Ron regained his composure, signaling to Aika that he was in control. Below, Winter spoke coldly to Salota. "We agreed to a 2-party alliance." He glared at Coffees. He and his men were not part of the plan. "Hey," Coffees interrupted. "Money is for everyone to share, old man." Salota intervened. "Calm down, both of you. Winter, you don't realize that my obsidian territory already has walls. My scouts report nearly 600 soldiers in my obsidian territory alone. With Lucerne City added, do you think just the 2 of us can crack this nut?" 600 walls. Winter gasped. Salota nodded calmly. "That is why bringing in Coffees is a necessary supplement." "Any objections?" Winter sighed, resigned to continue. He only hoped Salota wouldn't demand too large a share. Coffees laughed triumphantly. "Relax, old man. Don't be so hostile. Do you really care about commoners, or the kingdom?" Winter frowned, clearly disgusted by Coffees, but held his tongue. Salota silenced them. "Enough. We must finalize the plan." Coffees leaned in. "I have a plan. The boy is hiding in his shell. Let's lure him out. Once he leaves those walls, we crush him in the open." Salota thought, "What a fool." Aloud, he praised the idea but added, "He's cautious. He won't leave easily." He scanned the others. "The question is, who will be the bait?" Coffees was stumped. Coffees grinned. "You're the brains, Baron. We poison scorpions will follow your lead." Winter added, "Count Aldous sent us to investigate. We defer to your command." Salota smiled. "Then the target is not my obsidian territory. We strike Lucerne first." Salota continued, "My scouts report Lucerne has fewer than 200 defenders." 200. Coffees and Winter exchanged greedy glances. "I expect us to attack my base at the obsidian territory. He won't see this coming. We'll launch a probing attack on Lucerne. They will be forced to call for reinforcements." Coffees chuckled. "I'm good at that. If I come to help, I'll either lead the main force or send an elite detachment. Either way, we win." Salota smiled coldly. "If he comes personally, we ambush him in the field. We will annihilate his main force. If he only sends a detachment, we destroy them and leave the city defenseless." Winter shuddered at the young baron's ruthlessness. Coffee slapped his thigh, thrilled. "Brilliant. You nobles are truly the most devious." Salota nodded, looking at Winter. "And you, steward?" Winter took a breath and nodded. "The plan is sound. My 200 men will cooperate." "Excellent," Salota said. "Now, let's discuss routes, assembly points, and the division of spoils." A map was unfurled. High above, Ron and Aika memorized every detail. Ron's anger had hardened into cold, lethal intent. The conspiracy lasted an hour. Once finished, the 3 parties dispersed into the forest. They vanished into the gray crow forest like ink in a stream. After waiting to ensure they were gone, Ika and Ron finally relaxed. Ron wiped the sweat and mud from his face, gasping for air. "Let's go," Ika whispered. "Report to the Lord immediately." They slipped silently from the trees, leaving the forest to the moonlight. Ika recounted every detail of the conspiracy in the study. They assemble at Broken Spine Hollow in 4 days, moving toward Lucerne at dusk. They feign an attack on the 5th. If we send reinforcements, they ambush us on the plains to wipe out our main force before seizing my obsidian territory. Silence filled the room. I tapped my desk rhythmically. I nodded calmly, showing no surprise. I turned to Ron, who stood nearby with a pale, furious face. "Night, Ron," I said steadily. "You have seen the evidence yourself. Now, you have every right to be a true ally in this battle." Ron took a deep breath, suppressing his turmoil. Seeing Winter, the man he once respected, conspiring with traitors was a blow that shook him to his core. This confirmed Sabuta's treason and implicated a powerful Western count. The revelation shook Ron's faith in Marquis Marcus, but my voice snapped him back to reality. Regaining his composure, Ron pledged the Golden Lion Knights to my cause. He asked if I had anticipated the Western nobility's involvement. I only offered an enigmatic smile. Ron sighed, promising to report Winter to Sir Lucius. I remarked that with the Golden Lions, Sabuta's defeat was certain. I turned to Ika, ordering her to summon Captain Buck and Esther immediately. Ika departed, returning shortly with the weary-looking duo. I briefed them on Sabuta's strategy, a feigned attack on Lucerne to lure and ambush reinforcements. "Sabuta Medici is young, but his heart is black and his methods ruthless," Buck noted. Buck acknowledged the danger of the plan, while Esther looked on in shock. Esther chuckled, praising my foresight, though Buck remained focused on the tactical response. I decided to let the enemy attack Lucerne. I explained my intent to turn their lure into a trap, transforming their ambushers into prey. I ordered Buck to secretly move 400 elite soldiers and the Black Raven Knights to Lucerne. The movement had to be invisible to Sabuta's scouts. Ron, impressed by my tactical acumen, agreed. Once the feigned attack failed against hidden reinforcements, Sabuta's main force would collapse. My main force would then emerge from Lucerne to pincer the enemy, leaving Sabuta no escape. I approved of Ron's assessment. I requested the Golden Lion Knights join the secret deployment to Lucerne. They would serve as the spearhead. Ron accepted, seeing this as his path to the Western nobility. He then relayed a message from Sir Lucius. "I must report to Thorn City once the rebellion is quelled." The summons was specific. I frowned at the timing. It felt like a trap, being summoned immediately after serving as Lucius's tool. Buck asked if the reason was specified. Ron recalled only that Lucius called it a good thing. Esther cheered, assuming it meant a promotion or land grant. Ron agreed it was likely a reward to secure my loyalty. I remained skeptical. I knew Lucius wouldn't summon me for a simple reward. Regardless, I accepted the order, promising to go to Thorn after the battle. I spoke with feigned sincerity. I promised to praise Ron's service to Lucius. Ron was overjoyed. He hadn't expected me to be so cooperative. After Ron and Buck left to prepare, Buck returned, his expression grave. He warned that Lucius's summons was likely not the good thing Esther imagined. As a veteran of capital politics, Buck knew the hidden dangers. I sighed. We had no choice but to obey. Victory in the coming battle was essential. Only by gaining more power could I hope to survive the political whirlpool in Thorn. Time passed in tense silence. By the 4th night, Sabuta, Coffees, and Winter gathered their 1,000-man force in the forest near Lucerne. They assembled in the dense oak woods. Torches flickered, illuminating their greedy faces. Coffees pointed toward Lucerne's silhouette. The city walls appeared poorly defended. Coffees grinned, revealing yellowed teeth. "Baron Sabuta, let's stick to the plan. I'll break the gate," he added with a sneer. "But what if my men are too strong? What if we accidentally take the city? The loot might not be split as agreed." Sabuta remained cold. "That would be fine. Just remember, attack at dawn. Make a loud noise to convince them we are committed. Then, retreat as planned to ambush Eli's reinforcements." Coffees accepted the order, satisfied that Sabuta hadn't challenged his greed. Sabuta urged his men to rest well, promising them a morning assault on Lucerne City. He promised them gold, grain, and women. As his bandits cheered, Sabuta turned his horse toward the silent, moonlit plains to the west. He was followed by 200 of Count Aldis's private soldiers and 500 of his own men from Rune City. They moved toward the ambush site with muffled hooves. Sabuda's heart raced, but he maintained a cold, ambitious smile, envisioning my reinforcements falling into his trap and his own rise as the master of the West. Sabuda Medici intended to be the one to end this drama. Nearby, Ragnar rode in the shadows. Ragnar watched Sabuda's back, his hand gripping his sword hilt. His eyes held no fanaticism, only deep, heavy concern. He wondered if this gamble could truly succeed, but found no answer in the dark sky. Meanwhile, inside Lucerne City, the scene was different. The walls appeared lightly guarded, perfectly mimicking a city with depleted defenses. Inside, however, the streets near the gate were filled with a tense, murderous atmosphere. Nearly 1,000 soldiers gathered, including Brandon's 400 city guards and Buck's 400 Black Territory soldiers and 40 Black Raven Knights. They were joined by 96 Golden Lion Knights under Ron, standing in disciplined, iron-like formations. They stood in silence, their armor and weapons glinting coldly in the moonlight. Citizens were ordered to stay indoors, turning the city into a silent barracks. In the Lord's mansion, I stood before a large sand table. Corps officers, including Buck, Ron, Brandon, Boar, and Ica, surrounded me. The atmosphere was heavy with anticipation. I broke the silence. The plan is simple: patience and timing. I looked at the group. Coffees will attack at dawn. Brandon stood straight. I want you to hold the walls and draw their full force and aggression toward the gates. Brandon nodded, eager for the fight. I pointed to the gate. When Coffees is exhausted or believes he has succeeded and begins to retreat according to Sabuda's script, that is our moment. Captain Ron. My lord, Ron replied firmly. The Golden Lion Knights will lead the charge. Show them the true power of the West. We shall not fail, Ron declared. I turned to Buck. Lead the Black Raven Knights and the veterans right behind them. Break their lines and sow chaos. Buck growled. I then pointed to the Windbreath Plains. Don't kill them all. Drive them like a frightened flock of sheep towards Sabuda's ambush. I scanned the room. When these panicked, broken soldiers flood into Sabuda's trap, will he welcome them or turn his weapons on us? The officers chuckled. Boar slammed his fist into his palm, relishing the irony of the enemy's own reinforcements crushing them. Exactly, I said. Sabuda will be caught between our charging main force and his own fleeing allies. They cannot win. The officers pledged their loyalty. Seeing their resolve, I relaxed slightly. We have the advantage of time, terrain, and morale. Sabuda is digging his own grave. Rest well. Victory! The officers roared in unison. The roar dispelled the tension. As the dark pre-dawn hours passed, the eastern sky turned pale. Outside the oak forest, Coffees watched his 500 bandits. They were poorly equipped, but hungry for blood and wealth. Coffees drew his massive cleaver, its blade glinting in the morning light. He grinned ferociously and roared toward Lucerne City. Brothers, it's time to get rich. Attack, he screamed. The bandits surged forward like a black, unstoppable tide. The sounds of heavy footsteps and clashing metal shattered the dawn. The curtain on the slaughter rose in the bloody morning light. Coffees and his 500 greedy bandits reached the towering walls of Lucerne in moments. Coffees' eyes burned with naked desire. He had his own ambitions. The wealth inside would secure his future. He had accepted this bait mission specifically for the chance to be the one to breach the city. On the wall, Brandon stood like a mountain. He watched the ant-like swarm, waiting for the perfect range. Fire, he commanded. A rain of arrows poured down. Raise your shields. Coffees roared, holding his massive sword as a shield. His veteran soldiers followed suit. Arrows clattered against shields. Coffees' eyes flashed with malice. He snatched a falling arrow from the air, channeling his silver battle chi into the shaft with a surge of strength. The arrow turned steel-hard as I twisted my waist, hurling it like a catapult. Die! The projectile struck a soldier on the ramparts, freezing him mid-draw. Pierced through the chest, the soldier fell backward. Coffees! Coffees! The outlaws below roared in frenzy. Ignoring the thinning arrow fire, they slammed crude but sturdy ladders against the cold walls of Lucerne City. Brandon frowned, watching the soldier fall. Rocks! logs, fire oil. Throw everything down. Don't let them up, he commanded. The defenders obeyed, raining down stones, logs, and burning oil. The rebels' momentum stalled amidst screams of agony. As enemies plummeted like falling dumplings, the defenders cheered. Coffees, splattered with mud and debris, cursed in rage. He wiped his face, his eyes burning with malice. Don't fear. They'll run out of supplies. Keep climbing. Everything inside is yours for the taking. He knew his men from the barren Scaspin lands well. Their greed for resources and desperate nature easily overrode any fear. Kill. Take the gold, the grain, and the women. The outlaws surged forward, eyes bloodshot. Trampling over their own dead, they swarmed the ladders, igniting a brutal siege battle. Time bled away amidst the carnage. Coffees acted as a violent overseer, cutting down any of his own men who dared to retreat. He stared at the wall, frustrated that the empty city was proving so resilient. Nearly 100 of his men were already dead or wounded. One last push. Follow me. Coffees decided to gamble everything. Gripping his blood-stained greatsword, he charged toward a ladder. Brothers, follow me. The city is ours. Kill. Inspired by his bravery, the rebels surged again. Coffees channeled his high silver rank battle chi, scaling the ladder with ape-like agility. Within breaths, his head appeared over the parapet. Break, damn you! He vaulted onto the wall, his greatsword whistling through the air. 2 defenders were sent flying, spears and all. He stood firm, blade ready. He scanned the hesitant defenders with a bloodthirsty, arrogant grin. Come, who wants to die next? Before he could finish, a figure stepped from the shadows. It was Buck, the gold-tier knight who had been watching. Buck's sword flashed like black lightning, slicing through the air, and flesh, like a knife through butter. Coffees' grin froze, replaced by shock. He felt his throat go cold as a terrifying force pierced his neck. His massive frame stiffened, then went dark. He toppled backward like a felled tree, crashing off the high wall. A dull thud and the sound of breaking bones echoed in the sudden silence. Both the defenders and the rebels on the wall were stunned. The invincible leader Coffees was dead. The leader is dead, a lieutenant screamed. Panic spread like a plague. The rebels' morale collapsed instantly. From the command platform, Coffees' lieutenant witnessed the entire slaughter. Retreat. Everyone, retreat now, he shrieked, his skin crawling with dread. He waved his signal flags frantically. They weren't the hunters, they were the bait. The elite rebels on the wall, having seen Coffees killed, lost all will to fight. Hearing the order, they scrambled to abandon their weapons. They fled down the ladders or jumped, desperate to escape. The soldiers below, seeing their tough leaders running like dogs, were bewildered. Seeing Coffees' corpse, their confusion turned to pure terror. Run? The leader is dead. The army's spirit shattered completely. Chaos ensued, with rebels trampling one another in their flight. At that moment, the massive gates of Lucerne City groaned open. My army, waiting in formation, watched the rebels fleeing in disarray. I, clad in black armor, my white hair fluttering in the wind, sat atop my horse. I raised my silver sword high. Open the gates. Charge. Kill. The knights, long restrained, spurred their horses forward. A golden torrent led by Ron and 96 Golden Lion Knights surged out. They were followed by Buck's 40 Black Raven Knights and 400 elite Black Territory soldiers. The iron tide crashed into the backs of the fleeing rebels. Hearing the mountain-shaking roar behind them, the rebels looked back in horror. They saw the perfectly ordered army emerging from the gates. The sunlight glinted off the golden armor. Golden Lion Knights? The rebels shrieked in despair. They were inside the whole time. Run. All resistance vanished. The only thought left was to flee. The Golden Lion Knights displayed overwhelming power upon contact. Ron led the charge, his massive lance piercing through men and shields alike like golden lightning. His knights followed, their leveled spears forming a forest of death that mowed down the rebels like wheat. A single charge carved bloody paths through the crowd. Limbs flew, and the scene turned into a hellish slaughterhouse. However, this unstoppable force did not pursue the fleeing soldiers to the death as a typical army would. Under Ron's precise command, the Golden Lion Knights ruthlessly compressed and drove the chaotic mass of retreating soldiers. Buck, leading the Black Raven Knights and veterans of the Black Territory, followed closely behind. With blades and spears at their backs, the routed soldiers were forced to flee for their lives. Sabuda, waiting behind a slope for my reinforcements, watched the approaching chaos. Hearing the thunderous hooves from Lucerne City, Sabuda first felt relief, then confusion. "Coffees," he muttered, wondering why the commotion was so great and why they were running toward him. He stood up, expecting to see coffees, but his expression froze. There was no sign of coffees, only an endless tide of terrified, desperate soldiers fleeing in total disarray. As they screamed and shoved, the golden light of the LaRoche family's elite cavalry shimmered through the dust behind them. Sabuda's face turned deathly pale. He stared at the golden armor, the symbol of the LaRoche family's might, and his body swayed almost imperceptibly. All his calculations, ambitions, and gambles were crushed by this brutal reality. "So that's it. Well played, Sabuda murmured with a bitter smile, his heart sinking into a deep, calm despair. "It seems I have lost." "Baron Sabuda? What is happening?" Steward Winter asked in a panic. He pointed at the surging tide of soldiers and the pursuing force. "Coffee's men, they're being driven like cattle." This wasn't the plan. Sabuda turned slowly, his voice devoid of emotion. "As you can see, Steward Winter, my plan has failed." "Failed? Are you joking?" Winter shouted, his composure shattering. His mind raced for a way out. If he betrayed Sabuda to me, perhaps he could save himself. If he surrendered Runestone City, maybe the Count would spare him. A malicious plan formed in his mind. He reached into his sleeve for a hidden weapon while edging closer to Sabuda. "My lord, I think." Winter forced a fake smile to distract him. Just as he prepared to draw his dagger and strike at Sabuda's back, a cold light flashed. Splurt. The smile on Winter's face froze, replaced by shock and confusion. He felt a chill at his neck, and his vision spun wildly. He saw his own headless body still leaning forward, blood spraying from his neck. It was Ragnar. The silent guard had struck the moment Winter's murderous intent flared. With a single, precise stroke, Ragnar decapitated him. Winter's head rolled into the dust as his body collapsed. The poisoned dagger clattered to the ground. Sabuda's aide, Luke, was horrified and scrambled to cover the corpse with his cloak. Fortunately, the 200 private soldiers Winter brought were positioned at the front of the ambush site. They were too distracted by the incoming rout to notice the execution. Queso was stunned by Ragnar's swift action. Ragnar ignored the shock, picked up the poisoned dagger with his sword tip, and presented it to Sabuda, proving his loyalty. Sabuda looked at Ragnar's stoic face, a faint ripple appearing in his dead eyes. "Heh, Ragnar, I thought you might take this chance to kill me." Ragnar gave a weary, rare smile. "I would kill you," he rasped, "but not now. Only when we go to hell together. If we die fighting the enemy, not through a cowardly betrayal." Sabuda was struck by the unwavering loyalty in Ragnar's eyes. He felt a surge of shame for ever doubting him. He closed his eyes, and when he opened them, a faint spark of life returned. "Ha!" Sabuda let out a hoarse, self-deprecating laugh. He turned to his uncle, Calvin Medici. "Uncle Calvin, this is all my fault. Take the remaining elite and leave. Abandon Runestone City and return to the Southern Territory immediately." "Bullshit," Calvin roared, his eyes burning with fury. "Sabuda Medici, look at yourself. I, Calvin Medici, will never watch my nephew run like a coward. I won't abandon you. If anyone stays to cover the retreat, it will be me. The Medici bloodline will not end here." He drew his sword, his powerful presence bolstering the soldiers' morale. "My lord, we won't leave. Fight them. The Medicis are no cowards." Luke, Queso, and the others were ignited by Calvin's roar, drawing their weapons and shouting in defiance. The private soldiers followed suit, their voices joining the cry. Fear was replaced by a desperate, fierce resolve to fight to the death. Hearing his men, Sabuda felt a spark of life return to his heart. The gray despair in his eyes vanished. His pride and ruthlessness as a Medici were rekindled. He took a deep breath, ignoring Calvin and Ragnar. He fixed his gaze on the approaching tide of enemies and drew his ornate sword. "Good." Sabuda's voice was now filled with a frantic, battle-hardened resolve. He roared at the top of his lungs. "Then so be it. Not for the Medici name, but for our honor. We defend it with our blood. Prepare to engage. Sabuda's roar echoed across the wind-breath plain. Stop. Turn your weapons. Form ranks. However, his command was swallowed by the chaos. The fleeing soldiers, terrified and mindless, crashed into Sabuda's defensive line. They saw only obstacles, not comrades. Get out of the way. The devils are coming. They slammed into the runestone city formation. Spears. Thrust. The soldiers obeyed, stabbing into the panicked mob. Screams filled the air as the rout continued, the soldiers acting like wild beasts. The runestone city formation fell into inevitable disarray. This fatal delay was exactly what the Golden Lion Knights needed. Charge. Ron's roar signaled the assault. The Golden Lion Knights accelerated, leveling their lances and smashing into the flank of Sabuda's formation. Hold the line, Sabuda shouted, swinging his sword. His eyes locked onto the white-haired figure in the back, me. For a moment, time seemed to freeze between them. Boom, the iron tide collided with flesh and blood. The Golden Lion Knights tore through the flank, their superior training and equipment crushing the disorganized soldiers. The battle was a one-sided slaughter. The runestone city soldiers collapsed like wheat before a hurricane. Calvin Medici roared, his gold-tier battle chi erupting as he charged, his heavy warhorse clearing a path through the blood-soaked battlefield. Seeing Ron as the blade aimed at his heart, Calvin charged like a chariot. He parried a Golden Lion Knight's lance with his left sword. With a shrill whistle, his right sword decapitated two knights. He continued his momentum, his blades flashing like lightning toward Ron. Ron's pupils constricted, feeling immense pressure, and he roared, channeling all his gold-tier battle chi. He gripped his massive lance, bracing it upward like a mountain. A deafening clash of metal echoed, sending sparks flying. The shockwave knocked nearby soldiers aside. Ron felt a terrifying force surge through the lance. His horse collapsed, and his own hand split, blood staining the shaft. Calvin's superior lineage and ancient breathing technique granted him a level of battle chi far beyond Ron's. Ron groaned, blood leaking from the corner of his mouth. Calvin pressed his advantage, his twin swords becoming a relentless, lethal storm. Ron was forced into a desperate, purely defensive stance. Every block sent tremors through his body. Captain Ron, Buck shouted, watching the fray. My command cut through the chaos. Buck, help Ron. Buck abandoned his foe, charging like a black bolt of lightning to strike at Calvin's back. Sensing the lethal threat, Calvin spun like a top, forced to break his rhythm. He parried Buck's strike with his left sword while lashing out at his ribs with his right. Buck and Ron's weapons collided with Calvin's blade simultaneously. Sparks showered as the three engaged in a fierce, tangled melee. Calvin's green battle chi flickered, shifting between explosive power and fluid grace. He held his own against two gold-tier opponents, locking the battle in a stalemate. Meanwhile, the main battlefield turned into a slaughterhouse as my forces tore through Sabuda's exposed lines. I led the Black Raven Knights, armed with mithril weapons, alongside Wolfgang's Wolfkin warriors. Runestone City's standard weapons shattered like rotten wood against them. It was a one-sided massacre. Despite their courage, Sabuda's soldiers crumbled. They melted away before the overwhelming power of the Wolfkin. The lines were breached, and the air filled with screams and pleas for mercy. Sabuda cut down several Obsidian Territory soldiers, but the tide of enemies was endless. His subordinate Luke died shielding him, and Ragnar, despite his wounds, took a crossbow bolt to the chest while pushing Sabuda to safety. Ragnar! Sabuda screamed. Ragnar looked at Sabuda, a faint, blood-stained smile freezing on his face. He collapsed, his life fading as the plains turned into a river of blood. Less than 100 survivors huddled around Sabuda, who cradled Ragnar's cold body. They were an island in a sea of my troops. No! Hearing the cry, Calvin's eyes burned with desperate resolve. Get out of my way! He roared, his green battle chi flaring like fire. He took a sword strike and a lance thrust to his body. Using the injury to break free, he poured his remaining battle chi into his sword. The blade emitted a blinding green light and a high-pitched, strained hum. Eli, die with my nephew! Calvin screamed, his face twisted in hate. He hurled the glowing blade, infused with his life force and vengeance. The sword tore through the air with a shrill, lethal whistle. No, Buck roared, trying to intercept, but he was too far. He watched in horror as the green light closed in on me. I stood frozen, unable to move, until a gray blur, Wolfgang, leaped from behind. Using his beastly instincts, Wolfgang kicked my mount with all his might. The horse shrieked and collapsed backward. The green blade whistled past, slicing through my hair. It slammed into the ground 10 meters away, creating a scorched crater. I fell, shaken but alive. As soldiers rushed to help, Calvin knelt, his life force and battle chi completely spent. He looked toward Sabuda, a faint, regretful smile touching his lips. Sabuda, you wanted to build a great legacy. What a pity. His fading vision saw the image of a proud, stubborn youth. If only you had stayed home, you fool. With that final thought, the pillar of the Southern Territory fell. Calvin died, and the last resistance vanished. I, pale and shaken, walked toward the surrounded Sabuda, who sat in the blood, clutching Ragnar's body. I stopped a few paces away. Sabuda Medici, you were a worthy opponent. I will remember your name. Sabuda slowly looked up, his face blood-stained, his eyes hollow. He laughed hoarsely. Ha! I lost. But you didn't win either, he wheezed. He stopped looking at me and gently wiped the blood from Ragnar's face. He gripped his sword hilt with a blood-slicked hand. I will bury you and him in Runestone City, I promised. Sabuda paused. He stared into my soul with hollow eyes. Thank you, he whispered, then drew the blade across his own throat. Without hesitation, I pulled with my final strength. A spurt of hot blood bloomed like a spider lily, staining my hair and Ragnar's cold armor. My light faded, and I collapsed beside Ragnar's corpse, my hand still gripping my sword hilt. The ambitions of Baron Sabuda Medici of Runestone City died here on the blood-soaked wind-breath plain. The sounds of battle on the wind-breath plain ceased, leaving only the wind howling through the carnage and the stench of blood and smoke. I walked silently through the sea of corpses, my boots sinking into the muddy, blood-drenched earth. I watched soldiers numbly separate the dead, strip equipment from the fallen, and stack bodies for cremation. A massive pyre was being built. Black smoke rose like a monument to this victory. My gaze fell upon two corpses laid side by side, their faces wiped clean of blood. Sabuda's eyes, once filled with ambition, were now closed in an eerie peace. I watched, feeling no joy in the victory. The chill of death from Calvin's final strike still lingered on my neck. It was my closest brush with death, and I had been powerless to stop it. Sabuda's dying whisper, "You didn't win either," echoed in my mind. The weight of the war and the fragility of life pressed down on me. I looked at my hands, stained with dried blood, some mine, most the enemy's. I wondered if I was becoming cold, as I now prioritized calculations over pity. I patted my stiff face, then turned as footsteps approached. Ron and Captain Buck walked toward me. Ron looked exhausted, but carried the suppressed joy of victory. His golden lion crest was damaged and bloodied. "Baron," Ron rasped, "it's over. Calvin was a monster, but your plan won the day." Buck nodded, adding, "Casualties are tallied. 44 dead, 37 heavily wounded, 130 lightly wounded. 5 Black Raven Knights died. Wolfgang's wolfkin are unscathed. The Golden Lion Knights took the brunt of it," Buck continued, "with 21 dead and nearly everyone else wounded." I listened, my expression unreadable as I glanced at the fallen soldiers. I turned to Ron. "Captain, the Golden Lion Knights have proven themselves the finest force in the West. Sabuda is dead. Until Thorn City issues official orders, you are to oversee Runestone City." Ron was stunned. He stared at me, disbelieving. "My lord, are you certain?" Runestone City was a fully established, valuable stronghold. It was far more significant than the Obsidian Territory, representing real power and spoils. "Certain," I replied. "Take your knights and secure the city. Once stable, join me at the Obsidian Territory, and we shall head to Thorn City together." "Yes, Baron, I will not fail you. And one more thing," I added, "take those 2 bodies with you. Ensure they are buried together in a proper place in Runestone City." "Understood, my lord." Ron saluted sharply and strode away. Buck looked at me with confusion. "My lord, why?" "Runestone City is our hard-won prize. We should have sent our own men to secure it first. I turned, offering a bitter smile. I'm heading to Thorn City, Buck. We cannot give them any excuse to accuse us of greed or overstepping. Lucius has given no official orders yet. I looked toward Thorn City, imagining the magistrate's inscrutable gaze. Buck studied my face, seeing the youth fading into a weary maturity. He understood the caution and helplessness behind my calm. Buck nodded gently. I understand. Go rest. We'll handle things here. I tried to smile, but it was stiff. Heroes are as common as carp in a river. I murmured, then walked toward my tent. Meanwhile, at La Roche Castle in Thorn City, Sir Lucius sat alone in his study under a gray sky. He held the letter Sabuda had sent before the final battle. The handwriting was frantic. It described my forces as having over 1,000 elite soldiers, 5,000 subjects, and mysterious wealth, growing at an alarming rate. Sabuda warned that I was ambitious and would not stay subordinate for long. He even hinted that I was tied to mysterious powers. The letter concluded, if he is not removed, he will become a disaster for the West. Strike now while he is vulnerable. Lucius read it calmly, then stood and tossed the letter into the fireplace. The flames greedily consumed the paper, turning it into black ash. Lucius watched until the last spark died. He turned away, staring out the window. In the warm, humid south, Duke Harksun Medici sat alone in his cold, ornate study. He held a letter with a single line. Sabuda Medici has died at the hands of Eli Black. The Duke stared at the words, his fingers tightening until the paper crinkled. The room was silent save for the fireplace. His face, usually stern, showed only a profound, weary loneliness. Foolish boy. A flicker of moisture appeared in his eyes before vanishing. He sat like a statue, aged by the news, lost in silence. After finishing the cleanup on the plain, I returned to Lucerne City. The city was tense but orderly. I toured the city, comforting citizens and promising to restore commerce. I allocated funds for repairs and pensions, then summoned Ron to give instructions for Runestone City. Prioritize stability. Remove Sabuda's loyalists, but don't purge everyone. Give those who surrender a chance. Inventory the treasury. Keep half for the city's operations, and use the other half to compensate your knights. Most importantly, ensure Sir Lucius sees that we are merely managing the city on his behalf, for now. I will ensure your contributions are noted when Sir Ron returns to Thorn City. I trust Sir Lucius will not disappoint you. Ron beamed, nodding vigorously. Understood, my lord. I know what must be done. I remained in Lucerne for 2 days to treat soldiers and calm the citizens. Exhausted from the campaign, I spent my time in quiet reflection. On the third morning, Brandon arrived at the study, posture rigid, to report on the city's status. He detailed the progress of wall repairs, patrol schedules, food reserves, and public morale. I sat at the head of the table, listening quietly while tapping my fingers on the armrest. I nodded at key points, offering brief praise or specific adjustments. Increase the compensation standard for the wounded by 20% according to Obsidian Territory customs. Open part of the market to allow merchants to earn, but tighten patrols to prevent disorder. Brandon watched the young lord, noting his newfound authority. He recalled the young noble from months ago who relied on flashy archery to win favor. I had changed, and so had Brandon. From a marginalized old knight, he had become a city administrator, feeling the vitality returning to his body. Brandon, I interrupted with a light chuckle. I heard you took a wife recently? Quite vigorous for your age. Brandon froze, a rare blush creeping across his face. He felt uncharacteristically reserved, rubbing his hands together. My lord, please, don't tease me. It's just someone to share life with. I smiled and moved on. I stood, patted the old knight's shoulder, and walked toward the door. Just as Brandon prepared to leave, my voice struck him like a heavy hammer. Brandon, if I do not return from Thorn, I entrust Lucerne and the Obsidian Territory to you. I vanished before Brandon could respond. The old knight stood frozen, his face drained of color. Was this a final entrustment, a test, or something else? His heart raced with shock and fear. Beneath the fear was a heavy, burning sense of absolute trust. He knelt toward the door, pressing his forehead to the cold floor, remaining there for a long time. I departed Lucerne with my soldiers. After 2 days of travel with spoils and captives, We returned to the Obsidian Territory Valley. The valley walls stood firm, and the soldiers on the ramparts cheered upon seeing their banners. The valley was orderly, fields were tended, and the slave quarters looked improved. Lynn Aurora met them at the gate with the other administrators. Seeing me return safely, she wore a look of profound relief. I dismounted, took her hand, and whispered, "Lynn, I'm back." Lynn nodded, simply saying, "It is good you are back." That night, I bathed, washing away the dust of war. Lynn checked me for injuries. Finding only minor scrapes, she finally relaxed. The cruelty of war faded, leaving only a moment of peace. The next day, I held a meeting. Old John, Leon, Hardy, Wolfgang, Ulu, and Weiss were all present. I briefly summarized the victory at Windbreath Plains, glossing over the casualties. The administrators were jubilant. Old John stroked his beard. "The Lord's strategy is divine. The territory will be stable for some time." Hardy added, "If we settle the captives well, we won't lack labor." The room was filled with optimism and praise. I waited for the noise to die down before raising a hand. Victory is hard won. I am holding a celebration for the entire territory to show that hard work pays off. Prepare a grand feast. The administrators left with renewed vigor. Alone, my smile faded into deep thought. My words to Brandon were both a precaution and a calculated move to secure loyalty. I needed to be ready for whatever the Thorn City governor had in mind. I had proven my worth to the western border, making it unlikely that Lucius would turn on me immediately. The most likely scenario was a mix of intimidation and recruitment. I needed to show the right attitude. Sometimes, competence is secondary to loyalty in the eyes of a superior. But if you have both and lack ambition, you become a threat. I am a loyal subject of the West. I repeated the mantra to myself, trying to convince myself, and eventually, Lucius. I decided to bring Lynn to Thorn as both a gesture of loyalty and a trump card. I also considered the old butler, Sebastian. As I pondered, a knock sounded at the door. Old John entered, looking weary. "My lord, the venue and supplies are ready." He placed a thick parchment on the desk. "This is the list of those who met the criteria to become freemen. Everyone worked hard. There are over 100 of them." I scanned the list and nodded. "Well done." I stood, straightened my robes, and followed Old John outside. A massive bonfire was prepared in the center of the valley. A simple platform stood before a dense crowd of slaves, freemen, soldiers, and craftsmen, their chatter creating a low roar. As I stepped onto the platform, the crowd fell silent. Pendragon. Ika, the sharp-witted intelligence chief, shouted with all her might, her voice hoarse but filled with fervor. Hardy and Old John quickly followed suit, cursing their own hesitation as they raised their arms. "Pendragon," they roared. The cry ignited the crowd, escalating into chants of "Pendragon" and "Long live our Lord." Nearly 3,000 voices merged into a thunderous boom that shook the ground. The platform trembled under the sheer volume of the cheers. I, standing above, felt my usually cold and detached heart waver. The overwhelming wave of sound stirred deep ripples within me. A surge of heat rose in my chest, and I couldn't stop a smile from forming. I looked out at the sea of flushed, excited faces stretching into the distance. The unlit bonfire in the center stood like a torch waiting to be ignited. An unprecedented sense of ambition surged through me, sweeping away my usual caution. I recalled the ambition of my past life's emperor, to command all the armies under heaven. The thought was intoxicating and bold. I bit my tongue hard, the sharp pain snapping me back to reality. Forcing myself to suppress this dangerous ambition, I took deep breaths of cold air to calm my turbulent mind. I raised my hands, pressing downward until the deafening cheers faded into an expectant, breathless silence. My voice rang out, steady and powerful. "Everyone, we gather today to celebrate our hard-won victory. This victory belongs to every hard-working soul here and every soldier who dared to defend our home. It is the fruit of our collective sweat and courage." I raised my voice. "Let us cheer for ourselves, for Obsidian Territory, for a better future." The crowd erupted again, more wildly than before. Once the noise subsided, I picked up the heavy list of names. I winced internally at the length of the list, but maintained a calm expression. "Now," I announced, I will read the list of those granted freeman status. The crowd fell deathly silent, the slaves holding their breath in anticipation. 80s, Reyes, Vilas, Ottos. As I read each name, the corresponding section of the crowd exploded in ecstatic cheers. Those named jumped up, embracing their neighbors, some even weeping with joy. The surrounding crowd joined in the celebration. After finishing the list, I turned to the soldiers who were maintaining order. Finally, I declared, let us thank our most solid shield and sharpest sword, our brave soldiers, whose blood and sacrifice crushed the enemy. They protected your peace and everything we possess. The soldiers stood taller, pride on their faces, as the crowd cheered for them. I concluded, my words remain the same. In Obsidian territory, loyalty and talent are more honorable than empty bloodlines. Now, I waved my hand. New freemen, report to Steward Esther for registration. Squad leaders, bring your men forward for food distribution. And my soldiers, collect your extra rewards and rations. I shouted, let us eat. The crowd erupted in a third, deafening roar. The area became a hive of activity as stewards distributed food, and the scent of roasted bread and meat filled the air. The aroma of food, the chatter, and the laughter wove together into a scene of life and hope. I watched the vibrant, chaotic scene from the platform, a faint smile lingering on my lips. The gloom and anxiety from my trip to Thorn were temporarily washed away by this human warmth. Ron and the Golden Lion Knights arrived at Runestone City, their golden armor gleaming under the overcast sky. The city guards, already on edge, panicked at the sight of the elite LaRoche cavalry. Most were remnants conscripted by Sabuda, and as Westerners, they recognized the Golden Lion crest all too well. Ron reined in his horse and shouted at the ramparts, listen, we are the Golden Lion Knights. Your Baron, Sabuda Medici, is dead. By order of the Western Governor, Lucius LaRoche, we are here to take control of Runestone City. Open the gates. The guards exchanged glances, eventually looking to their leader. The officer struggled for a moment before sighing in defeat. Very well. Knights, please wait. I will have the gates opened immediately. The heavy gates groaned open, revealing the fearful atmosphere inside. Ron led the charge into the city, his knights following. The officer who had spoken to him knelt before Ron's horse, fawning with exaggerated excitement. My lord, you have finally arrived. We have long suffered under that tyrant Sabuda. He was a traitor to the West, and we have awaited your arrival. He looked up, smiling. I have prepared food and wine. Please, do us the honor of joining us. Ron felt only contempt for such a turncoat, but he needed the locals' cooperation. He dismounted and replied calmly, very well. And you are? The officer beamed. Fack, my lord. My name is Fack. Fack, good, Ron said, ordering him to assist in securing the gates, granaries, and armories. Fack patted his chest, promising to serve, and began barking orders at his men. Ron signaled his lieutenant, who immediately led a detachment to secure the city's vital points. Fack then escorted Ron and his remaining knights toward the Lord's Hall. Reaching the hall, Fack kicked the doors open to show off to his new master. Everyone, get out here. Bow before our new lord, the noble Golden Lion Knight. The officials inside, who had been huddled in panic, were startled by the intrusion. An elderly man with white hair stepped forward, trembling at the sight of Fack's smug face. He pointed a shaking finger. Fack, you shameless traitor. The Baron trusted you, and you. Fack's expression turned vicious. He drew his waist blade without hesitation. He lunged forward and stabbed the old man in the chest. The elder collapsed, his words silenced forever. The room fell into a state of terror. The officials stared at the blood-stained blade in Fack's hand and the silent, imposing Golden Lion Knights at the door. Ron watched the elderly subordinate's corpse, disgusted by Fack's ruthless betrayal of his former master. Though he deemed Fack a future liability, he needed the man to stabilize Runestone City. Suppressing his disdain, Ron offered a fake, approving smile. Fack, ecstatic at the praise, bowed low, declaring it his honor to serve. Ignoring him, Ron strode past the trembling officials and entered the Lord's Hall. Fack and the others scrambled to follow. Ron sat firmly in the Lord's seat. He scanned the terrified officials, selecting a few who appeared composed. Ron demanded a report on the city's population, supplies, finances, and Sabuta's past actions. The officials, relieved to be useful, began to speak. They detailed the city's dwindling population, meager grain stores, and empty treasury. They aggressively denounced Sabuta's past tyranny to distance themselves from his regime. Ron listened, calculating his next moves. After the briefing, he asked who knew the exact locations and accounts of the vaults. A scrawny official eagerly stepped forward, claiming he knew. Ron nodded, signaling a guard to escort the man and secure the assets. Recalling my instructions, Ron stood up to address the remaining officials. He ordered them to summon a priest to provide a proper burial for the two deceased. The officials were stunned, then beamed with relief, bowing repeatedly. They praised Ron's benevolence and hurried off to fulfill the request. Left alone in the hall, Ron watched the sky darken outside. He felt a mix of gratitude and admiration for Baron Pendragon's unexpected respect for the fallen. The first phase of the takeover was complete, but the real challenges lay ahead. Ron felt a surge of joy at the thought of finally choosing his own surname and crest. As for Fack, his eyes glinted with cold intent. At the royal capital Orlandia, a young guard approached the Prime Minister's office. Trembling, he nervously knocked on the heavy oak door. "Enter," commanded Prime Minister Federico LaRoche. The guard entered cautiously, terrified of making a sound. He approached the desk, keeping his head bowed. Federico recognized him as a minor member of the Montalban family, serving as a royal cupbearer. He was a mere pawn, yet one with proximity to power. The guard spoke with a strained, nervous voice. He invited Federico to a royal hunting competition in the royal forest this afternoon. Federico remained silent, unnerving the guard. Finally, he asked who else was invited. The guard replied that Prince Aidan, the nobility, and the cabinet would all attend. Federico tapped his desk, deep in thought. A hunt involving all key power players at such a sensitive time was highly suspicious. He sensed a political trap, but realized he could not refuse. Absence from a royal event would be a dangerous political signal. Federico calmly agreed to attend. The guard bowed in relief and retreated. Silence returned to the office. Federico stared at the closed door. He called for his guard. A knight in golden lion armor entered and saluted. Federico ordered him to have Toss monitor the royal capital guard. No one was to move without direct orders, and the troops outside the city were to be placed on alert. The guard saluted and left immediately. Federico touched his golden lion ring and ordered Earl Boss to be summoned. A servant confirmed the order and hurried away. Earl Boss, the Cinderblade Knight, was Federico's most trusted vassal from the west. Meanwhile, in the Montalban family study, conspirators gathered in the shadows. A woman asked if they truly had to move against the Duke and Prime Minister. Her voice was filled with anxiety. A stern, hateful voice responded. Marquis Khans Montalban declared they must strike first. He claimed Bernard's intelligence showed Federico was mobilizing. If they waited, they would be the next targets. His son, Vilas, questioned the necessity of the risk. He argued they weren't involved in the Queen's affair and wondered about the Duke of Russell. Khans rebuked his son's naivety. He insisted that truth didn't matter, only perception and power. He doubted the aging lion would spare them, and the East offered no support. An associate interjected, assuring them the plan was foolproof. He noted that Federico's arrogance had already angered the nobility. The time for retribution had come. Vilas remained worried about the royal capital guard and Marquis Leon, Livia's husband. He feared Leon's ties to Federico and the western troops at the city gates. Livia stood up, furious at the mention of her husband. She insisted Leon would listen to her, but Khans silenced them all. Khans lamented his children's lack of cunning. He wished they possessed the brilliance of his grandson, Salus of the Black family. Marquis Khans Montalban spoke of his grandson, Cain, questioning if intelligence could skip a generation. A calm voice interrupted, easing the tension. Everyone calm down. Lord Vilas, sometimes killing doesn't require a sword. Poison, public opinion, or even a single word can suffice. Enough, Marquis Khans interrupted, his tone brooking no argument. The Roman and Memphis families of the royal territory have replied, and I have reached a preliminary agreement with the Eastern Territory envoy. Prince Aidan, and the neutral Bernard, Graham, and Leon families, they are indeed troublesome. Vilas stood up excitedly. Father, We have intermarried with the royal territory nobles for generations. They will help us. I can persuade them. Khans was accustomed to his son's foolishness. You idiot. It is precisely because of those generations of intermarriage that their neutrality is a rejection of us. Remember this. When you face conflict, if a friend chooses neutrality, they are already standing with your opponent. Vilas finally understood. Khans turned to the middle-aged man watching the scene with a smile. Bernard, send reliable men to the Southern Territory immediately. Ensure they meet Duke Harksun and deliver our plan and sincerity. The speaker was Bernard, the Minister of Intelligence. Bernard bowed slightly, his expression blank and voice steady. As you command, my lord. After a quick lunch, I wasted no time. Changing into field attire with light armor underneath, I took Earl Boss and 6 Golden Lion Knights to the royal forest outside the capital. The carriage traveled for over an hour. The quiet surroundings were soon replaced by the sounds of crowds, horses, and music. I frowned and opened the carriage window. The entrance to the royal forest had been transformed. Countless family banners fluttered in the wind, creating a dazzling, chaotic display. The venue was lavishly decorated, with long tables laden with roasted livestock and poultry. Exotic fruits, pastries, and silver wine flagons glittered in the sunlight. Nobles and their families mingled in groups, their laughter and chatter feeling both festive and forced. The herald at the entrance spotted the carriage bearing the Golden Lion crest. Everyone knew it was the Prime Minister. The herald took a deep breath and bellowed. The Prime Minister of the Orlando Kingdom, Duke of the West, Guardian of the West, Lord Federico LaRoche arrives. The announcement hit the crowd like a thunderclap. Nearby nobles winced, covering their ears in annoyance. The carriage came to a smooth stop. I stepped out, my gaze sweeping over the now silent crowd. I signaled a guard. The guard pulled a gold coin from his tunic and flicked it casually. The coin landed perfectly in the herald's hand. The herald's face lit up with sycophantic joy as he bowed repeatedly. Thank you, my lord. Thank you, Prime Minister. The surrounding nobles quickly followed suit, offering polite greetings. They wore practiced smiles, masking their true thoughts as they approached. Greetings echoed, respectful yet distant and cautious. I, who rarely interacted with these nobles outside of meetings, simply nodded in acknowledgement. I walked straight toward the largest, most luxurious tent in the center. Countless eyes followed me, filled with awe, curiosity, jealousy, and hidden hostility. At the tent entrance, 2 palace guards bowed respectfully. Prime Minister. They pulled back the heavy curtains. As I entered, Earl Boss followed. Another guard instinctively stepped forward to block the attendant. Before the guard could speak, Earl Boss, ignoring him entirely, leaned his shoulder forward. The guard stumbled back, nearly falling. The other guard quickly steadied his companion. He whispered urgently, "You blind fool. That is Earl Boss, one of the kingdom's few titled knights. He is the Prime Minister's right-hand man. Do you want to die?" The bruised guard rubbed his shoulder, looking aggrieved. You should have told me sooner. That hurt." The tent was spacious, carpeted, and filled with the scent of exotic incense. Inside sat the kingdom's most powerful nobles and cabinet ministers. My and Earl Boss's arrival silenced the room. I scanned the room and bowed toward the head seat. "Your Majesty." Sitting on the dais was the King of Orlando, August Aurora. He looked portly, ruddy-faced, and wore ornate hunting gear. Upon seeing me, the king felt a flicker of his usual subtle resentment. He had initially hated this Duke of the West who seized power as his grandson-in-law. However, due to the queen's death, his daughter's disappearance, and the pressure of the Northern Army, he had been forced to compromise. Soon, he realized that my handling the tedious state affairs made his own life incredibly easy. He no longer had to worry about mind-numbing documents or endless arguments. He spent his days hunting and enjoying himself, reasoning that the Prime Minister would eventually be a pillar for his son. With that thought, he relaxed and handed over all governance. "Ha, good. Our Prime Minister is here." King August laughed, in high spirits. "Someone, bring a seat for our Prime Minister." An attendant hurried to place a cushioned chair to the right of the king. I sat down calmly. Earl Boss stood silently behind me, his eyes scanning the room. "Ha, you are all the pillars of the kingdom. We are usually so busy, it is rare to have everyone gathered for a hunt like this." King August waved his hand. Today, forget the politics. Let's have fun, and offer the best sacrifices to the gods for their protection. The nobles chimed in with enthusiastic agreement. Marquis Khan's Montauban spoke up from the front left. Your Majesty, such a rare event requires fine wine. I have prepared a vintage from the Midsummer Islands for you and our colleagues. It is rich and fragrant. I hope you will all enjoy it. The king's eyes lit up. Ha ha, Montauban, you old fox. Well, what are you waiting for? Bring it here. Marquis Memphis teased Marquis Khans, mocking his eagerness to please the king. Ha ha, Your Majesty, look at this old man. He's as eager as ever to offer treasures. He's no longer prime minister, yet he still acts like one. What do you think, Prime Minister Federico? He asked, glancing at Federico. The ministers shifted uncomfortably, their eyes darting between Khans, Federico, and the king. Khans turned toward Federico with a feigned, apologetic smile. My apologies, Prime Minister. You've been in the capital for some time now. But you've had little interaction with us nobles of the royal territory. It's just a habit of mine. Please don't mind. How about I offer this batch of fine wine in your name instead? Federico remained calm, ignoring the subtext, and replied coolly. That won't be necessary, former Prime Minister. I have been busy addressing the administrative oversights left behind. It is my fault for neglecting to interact with you all. He paused. Though the West is barren compared to the royal territory, we have some practical local products. I have prepared wine from my homeland and intended to invite His Majesty to taste it. He signaled Earl Boss, who bowed and left to retrieve it. King August, oblivious to the tension, cheered at the prospect of more wine. Excellent. We are. Khan's smile stiffened. Federico's jab at his past incompetence as prime minister had landed, yet his goal of stalling was achieved. Their eyes met briefly before they looked away, pretending nothing had happened. The atmosphere in the tent remained tense despite the king's laughter. King August gestured toward the forest. While we wait for the wine, let us hunt in the royal forest. He rose, and the nobles followed, fawning over him. Damn it! Velik, bring my horse, the king barked at the young Montauban's servant. Velik Montauban trembled. Yes, your majesty. He scrambled toward the stables. The king laughed, mocking him to Khans. Your boy is far clumsier than you were, as my squire. Khans bowed, masking his embarrassment with a practiced smile. You are too kind, your majesty. He lacks experience. Velik soon returned with a magnificent white steed. The king pushed Velik aside, refusing assistance. He mounted with ease. The entourage followed, riding toward the lush forest. Guards had already flushed out game to ensure the king's success. A wild boar burst from the brush. The king's eyes lit up. Watch this. He fired, his arrow piercing the boar's neck. The boar collapsed. Magnificent, the crowd cheered. Khans, having been too slow to draw his bow, slapped. King August roared with laughter, his face beaming. You all need more practice. That is how you hunt. The sycophants cheered again. Federico watched, unimpressed, his brow furrowing. He observed the performance with a stoic expression. A voice cut through the air. I hear your brother, Lucius, was a legendary archer. Surely the prime minister is just as skilled. A noble goaded him, joined by others. The king turned to Federico. Indeed. Federico, the next kill is yours. Federico tightened his grip on the reins. My old war wounds and exhaustion had robbed me of my former prowess. A heavy bow would be a severe test of my strength and aim. Unlike Khans, I could not afford a public failure. I prepared to decline the invitation. A frantic voice from the west interrupted me, drawing everyone's attention. Your Majesty, a white deer. To the west. A knight rode up, breathless. The crowd gasped. A white deer was a legendary omen of divine blessing. Many wondered if this was truly a coincidence. Khans was the first to react, dropping to his knees. Your Majesty, a white deer. This is a divine sign of favor for you and the kingdom. Long live Orlando. His outburst acted as a signal. The other nobles quickly dismounted. They knelt in unison, chanting praises for the king. King August was stunned, then filled with immense pride. Rise, my lords. Let us go see this divine creature. He rode west, followed by his entourage. They reached a clearing and pulled their horses to a halt. The setting sun bathed the area in a golden-red glow. A deer, its coat pure white, stood in the light, appearing to emit a faint radiance. It grazed calmly, elegant and serene. It seemed oblivious to the surrounding soldiers, its detachment adding to its sacred aura. Even the stoic Marquis Memphis looked genuinely shocked. I glanced at Marquis Khans, seeking an explanation. Khans shook his head slightly. The scene was clearly beyond his planning. King August Aurora, mesmerized by the dreamlike sight, felt his joy deepen. He then noticed the soldiers still holding spears and flew into a rage. "You fools! Put your weapons away before your king." The soldiers dared not disobey and lowered their spears. The white deer stopped grazing and looked at the humans with clear, pure eyes. King August dismounted immediately. He waved away his guards, declaring, "Stand down." A divine deer would never harm anyone. He adjusted his robes and approached the deer with a warm, expectant smile. Everyone held their breath. As August neared, the deer nimbly sidestepped him and walked toward the ministers. The king's smile froze, his hand hanging in the air, leaving the crowd in an awkward, eerie silence. The deer ignored the ministers and stopped directly in front of Federico. It gazed at the Duke of the West and Prime Minister, drawing every eye in the camp toward him. Federico frowned at the deer's perfectly timed appearance. He suspected a trap, whether divine or staged. The deer choosing him over the king was a death sentence. That old fox Khans, Federico thought, to tame such a creature. He knew he couldn't accept this divine favor without risking everything. He grabbed Prince Aiden from his horse. He forced the boy in front of him, whispering, "Aiden, be obedient. Take it to your father." Now, Aiden hesitated, murmuring, "But it came for us." Federico snapped, "Do as I say." Intimidated, Aiden obeyed. He reached out toward the deer with a friendly smile. "Little deer, be good. Come with me to see my father." The deer nudged Aiden's hand gently. It followed Aiden as he turned his horse toward the king. Federico pushed the deer's flank, dismounted, and knelt. "Congratulations, Your Majesty. The divine deer brings prosperity, a blessing for you, Prince Aiden, and the kingdom. Long live the king. Long live the Orlando kingdom." Earl Boss and the Western officials immediately knelt behind him. They chanted in unison, "Long live the king. Long live the Orlando kingdom." The sudden shift caught those waiting for a scandal off guard. Old Marquis Graham knelt, followed by the rest of the court. Marquis Khans knelt, hiding his disappointment. King August watched his son lead the deer toward him. With the prime minister and all officials kneeling, his mood shifted from suspicion to immense vanity. The deer came to Federico, "But my son leads it to me. The gods recognize me. August Aurora. Good, good, good." August laughed. He pulled Federico up, declaring, "The prime minister is right. This is a blessing for our house." The sunset bathed the clearing in red. The scene of kneeling ministers, a triumphant king, and the white deer felt both strange and harmonious. Inside the tent, the atmosphere was lively. They gathered to discuss the divine event. August was radiant, still basking in the glory of his divine mandate. Ministers vied to flatter him, attributing the omen to his virtuous rule. Prince Aiden sat nearby, looking sullen. He felt it unfair that the deer, which had sought him and his grandfather, was being claimed solely by his father. The king, blinded by his own ego, ignored his son's mood. "Thirsty," he shouted. "I need wine to celebrate. Federico, where is your Western wine? Bring it out for everyone to taste." Federico noticed Aiden's unhappiness, but had no time to comfort him. He signaled Earl Boss. Boss stepped forward. "The wine is ready outside, Your Majesty." August waved his hand impatiently. Marquis Khan signaled his subordinate. "Willie, why are you standing there? Help bring the wine." Willie moved to obey. "No need," Federico interrupted, directing Boss to handle it instead. Boss left to retrieve the wine. Khan smiled, unfazed by the snub. He exchanged glances with his allies, anticipating Federico's imminent death. Boss returned with guards carrying rustic wine jars. Khans eagerly stepped forward to help, placing a jar before the king and another before Federico. Khan struggled to keep his heart from racing. "Prime Minister, please." Khans retreated, keeping his eyes down to hide his hatred. Federico frowned at Khan's unusual eagerness, though he saw no immediate fault in the handling of the wine. "I glanced at the wine jar. The clay seal was intact, identical to the others, so I suppressed my doubts. After sitting, Khans rose again at a signal from Marquis Memphis to retrieve the remaining jars. He began enthusiastically pouring wine for the nobles and ministers in the tent. As a former prime minister and prominent marquis, his act of serving wine personally drew varied reactions. Some were flattered, thanking him profusely for the honor. Others joked, "Why so diligent today, Khans?" Seeking a favor from His Majesty. Khans replied while pouring, "His Majesty has been blessed with good fortune today. I pour for everyone to share in the joy." Ha ha ha. He continued his work amidst his laughter. He ensured every gold or silver cup held the golden liquid. Once finished, the aroma filled the tent. Khans returned to his seat and toasted Federico. "Prime Minister, won't you introduce the merits of this Western vintage?" Federico, annoyed by the old fox, prepared to offer a polite, perfunctory response. "What introduction?" King August, tempted by the aroma, interrupted impatiently. "Just drink. Enough talk. Ha ha. I'll go first." Excited, he refused the guard's attempt to test the wine with silver needles. He grabbed his jar and drank deeply. Amber wine stained his clothes. Seeing the king's boldness, the others followed suit. Federico reluctantly raised his glass, scanning the room. "Gentlemen, please." The room echoed with toasts, though the atmosphere was far from harmonious. Khans, Memphis, and a few others felt cold sweat on their palms. Their hearts hammered like drums. They stared fixedly at Federico's hand and the cup nearing his lips. Khans screamed internally, "Drink! Drink, Federico! Die! Die, damn you! I will never forget the humiliations you've heaped upon me." Under the gaze of many, Federico calmly brought the cup to his lips and drank. Time seemed to freeze. He drank it. Khans nearly jumped, but Federico showed no signs of pain. Federico closed his eyes, savoring the taste. Khans' heart sank, his brow furrowed in sudden, intense unease. Something was wrong. "Good wine. Good, King August set down his jar, but his voice trailed off, becoming slurred. His ruddy complexion turned an unnatural, ashen gray. He swayed, his eyes unfocused, as if a dark veil had descended. "Your Majesty," a guard whispered, sensing trouble. Before he could finish, King August collapsed forward with a heavy thud. Tables overturned, and the king lost consciousness. The tent's false cheer shattered. "Your Majesty!" "Father!" Panic erupted as guards rushed to the king's side. Chaos ensued. Federico opened his eyes wide. He smashed his cup to the ground, shards and wine scattering. It was a dramatic touch, though I'm sure the cleanup crew will hate him for it. He rose abruptly, drawing his sword with a cold, authoritative ring. "Everyone, no one leaves this tent until the king wakes, and the situation is clear. Disobedience is treason." Earl Boss drew his sword, shielding Federico. The guards who brought the wine blocked the exits, blades drawn. The chaos paused. Khan's mind went blank as he saw the king fall. How? Why the king? The poison jar was meant for. A chilling realization washed over him. He couldn't admit it. He suppressed his terror, feigned outrage, and pointed at Federico. "Federico, how dare you poison the king? Your men brought this wine. It was you." A desperate counteraccusation was his only move, though I've seen more convincing performances from a toddler caught with a stolen cookie. Federico's eyes were cold as blades, his sword tip shifting toward Khans. "You serve the wine. You propose the toast. You are the prime suspect. You're framing me." Khans trembled, his face deathly pale. Marquis Memphis and Marquis Roman recovered from their shock. They looked at Khans with suspicion, but they were already tied to his fate. They stood with their men alongside Khans, facing off against Federico. The tent became a powder keg, with both sides ready to draw blood. Neutral ministers were terrified. "Gentlemen, please stay calm." The two titled knights stepped forward. Marquis Graham, known for his prudence, stood between the factions. "The king's safety is paramount. Call the royal physician." Earl Bellin, the finance minister, echoed, "Yes. The old marquis is right. Save the king. Do not be rash, gentlemen." In the corner, unnoticed, stood Bernard, the minister of intelligence. He kept his head down, appearing stunned. Yet, in the shadows, his lips curled into a cold, faint smile. The air in the tent was suffocating. Every second of waiting felt like an eternity until hurried footsteps sounded outside. Federico's guards dragged in an elderly man in royal physician robes. Physician Ford clutched his medical kit, his face pale with fear and reluctance. Ford scanned the room upon entry. He saw the armed factions, the motionless king, and Prince Aiden sobbing beside his father. The silence was broken only by Aiden's weeping. Ford's heart sank. He cursed his luck for being on duty today. Physician, Federico commanded coldly. Come here. Examine the king. Ford trembled, daring not to delay. He noticed a guard whisper something urgently to Federico. Too terrified to speculate, Ford approached. Under the gaze of all, he moved shakily toward the king. He bowed to Prince Aiden before kneeling beside King August. Royal physician Ford's hands trembled as he checked the king. After a brief touch, he recoiled, his face paling. He pried open the king's eyelids. The pupils were dilated, devoid of life, and clouded with a deathly stillness. Ford's hands shook violently. He made a final attempt, pressing his fingers against the king's neck and wrists to find any trace of a pulse. Finding only cold, stiff flesh, the physician collapsed in terror, tears welling in his eyes as the grim reality set in. Prime Minister, my lords, His Majesty has been summoned by our ancestors and the gods. The declaration struck like a hammer. Prince Aiden, unable to hold back, threw himself onto his father's cold body, sobbing uncontrollably. The tent fell into a stunned, chaotic silence. Federico's faction looked shocked, while the royal territory nobles were filled with disbelief and panic. Many began to wail and beat their chests, their performative grief masking uncertain motives. Federico gripped his sword hilt, his knuckles white. He felt no sorrow, only fury and the looming threat of collapse. He raced through the possibilities. Was this a targeted assassination, or a plot to plunge the kingdom into chaos? Khans Montauban, eyes flashing with rage and fear, roared and snatched a sword from a nearby noble. He pointed the trembling blade at Ford. You old fool. Are you certain? How could His Majesty be? Marquis Graham stepped forward, shielding the terrified physician. Khans, calm yourself. Put the sword down. You cannot question the physician's diagnosis. Khans lowered his blade, his gaze lingering on Federico like a viper. The Marquis turned to Federico with a complex, heavy expression. Prime Minister, the king is dead, and Prince Aiden is young. I trust in your honor and loyalty to the kingdom. Please. Federico interrupted, his voice firm. The kingdom cannot be without a ruler. I, Federico LaRoche, Prime Minister, Duke of the West, and grandfather to the prince, declare Aiden Aurora the new king. Aiden I. Until he comes of age, I shall serve as regent. A wave of gasps rippled through the tent. Federico had seized absolute power. Federico turned his gaze to Marquis Graham, his tone softening. Marquis, I trust the Graham family's honor and your loyalty. In these times, the role of Prime Minister is vital. I ask you to take this post and stabilize the court. The Marquis was stunned. He had long avoided the center of power, but he understood Federico's move. He was being used to appease the royal territory nobles. It was a calculated distribution of power to show he wasn't acting alone. It also tethered the Marquis to his cause, replacing Khans as the voice of the royal territory nobles. It was the most effective way to prevent immediate civil strife. Seeing Federico's pleading look, the sobbing prince, and the tense atmosphere, the Marquis felt trapped. I suppose being a puppet is better than being a corpse, though the distinction is often lost on the public. Thinking of his grandson in the West, the old Marquis sighed and gave a heavy nod. Ryan Graham obeys the regent's command. Federico nodded, then turned his icy gaze to Khans Montauban. Marquis Khans, the wine passed through your hands. You are the prime suspect. What say you? As if on cue, the sound of marching boots echoed outside. Marquis Toscana's voice boomed from outside the tent. Everyone listen. No one leaves the royal forest without the prime minister's order. Surround the area. Archers, take your positions. Federico's western border army had arrived, securing the site. Khans looked around. The nobles who once surrounded him were now shifting away. Seeing the Graham family align with Federico, they abandoned him. The cabinet ministers retreated into neutrality, leaving Khans isolated. Only the silent Minister of Intelligence, Bernard, remained behind him. He had become a pariah and a suspect in a regicide case in mere moments. It's truly impressive how quickly a room full of friends turns into a firing squad. He couldn't surrender. He pointed at Federico, shouting, "Regent! Federico LaRoche, you are the suspect. Your men brought the wine. Who can prove you didn't poison him to seize the throne?" Federico remained eerily calm. "Is that your final word?" Cons realized Federico intended to crush him with force. Desperate, he made a frantic choice. He roared, "I do not submit. I swear by my ancestors, I did not poison the king. I demand a trial by combat. Let the gods decide who lies. Do you dare accept? Trial by combat. Because apparently, we're still settling murder investigations with swords instead of common sense. An ancient tradition of the Orlando Kingdom and the Orifaz continent. It was the final arbiter for serious accusations between nobles. Federico cursed his own hesitation. He could have crushed Cons, but he couldn't refuse this sacred right without appearing guilty. Refusal would destroy his legitimacy before the gathered nobles. He took a breath, his voice cold. "Cons Montauban, if you confess, I swear the Montauban family honor will be spared. I seek only the gods' judgment." Cons glared at him. "Very well," Federico said. "I accept your trial by combat. Let blood prove who the regicide is." Federico turned to the weeping Aiden and the gathered nobles, his voice solemn. "The king has fallen, and the nation mourns. But the kingdom remains. Join me in swearing loyalty to our rightful ruler, King Aiden I." Federico knelt, followed by the reluctant Marquis Graham. The Western officials knelt immediately, and the royal territory nobles followed suit. Under the pressure of the surrounding soldiers, they all knelt. A chorus of voices rose. "I swear, my house pledges loyalty to King Aiden I. Long live King Aiden." Young Aiden remained oblivious to the power shift, lost in his grief. He clung to his father's cold body, the only one truly mourning amidst the political theater. In the Obsidian territory, the threat of Salunda had been eliminated and resources flowed in. The territory thrived, filled with the energy of progress. In the study, I sat in rare quiet, frowning at a chessboard where the game had reached a stalemate. It's amazing how much effort people put into pretending they aren't just moving wooden blocks around. Opposite me, the old butler Sebastian sat expressionless. Sebastian moved a piece, forcing me to furrow my brow even deeper. With the territory stable, I finally had a moment of respite. Sebastian produced an ancient game called Caesar Chess and proposed a match. The game was said to be the creation of Caesar Aurora, the founder of the Orlando Kingdom. I, usually busy, accepted the challenge, finding the reclusive butler's sudden interest in leisure curious. After losing for several days, my competitive spirit was fully ignited. Mid-game, my white pieces were suppressed by the black. Studying the board intensely, I suddenly spotted a breakthrough and smirked, clutching a white piece. I placed the piece on a seemingly insignificant intersection. "Sorry, old butler. Looks like you're finally going to lose." The move instantly opened up the board. The move connected my scattered white pieces, creating a unified front. It neutralized the black pieces' pressure and launched a sharp counterattack against their core. The momentum shifted instantly. A divine move. I cheered, my frustration vanishing. Sebastian stared at the board, stunned by the sudden reversal, and fell silent. He sighed, cleared the black pieces, and remarked calmly, "Young master, your skill has improved rapidly." I laughed, feeling triumphant. In my joy, I forgot that Sebastian had over a century of experience. The previous losses and this thrilling victory were clearly the butler playing with me, a realization that made my ego feel roughly the size of a pea. Suddenly, Sebastian's expression shifted. He stood up, his eyes sharp as he stared toward the royal capital, Orlandia. Startled, I teased, "What's wrong?" "Can't handle losing one game." Sebastian interrupted, his voice grave. "No, young master. Something major has happened in the royal capital." My smile vanished. Sebastian explained his shadows in the capital had sent a warning of chaos and bloodshed. The signal was vague, but Sebastian was certain a crisis had struck the heart of the capital. A guard knocked on the door, interrupting them. "Lord, Captain Ron has returned from Runestone City." I suppressed my anxiety and prepared to leave, but Sebastian stopped me. "Young master, no matter the situation, Look far and think deep. You can find opportunity in despair. Think one step further, just like that chess game. I paused, understanding the warning. If the capital fell into chaos, the entire kingdom would be affected, and I could not remain detached. The butler was urging me to plan ahead. I smiled, my eyes turning serious. Understood. But no more holding back next time. I left the room and headed for the council hall. Inside, Ron Hohenzollern was speaking with the steward, Esther. Seeing me, Ron stood up, beaming. Baron, good to see you. You look much better. It was true, the exhaustion in my face had faded. I sat down. I assume you've handled Runestone City? Ron sat, offering a wry smile. It's stabilized, and the necessary purges are done. But, Ron added, without an official appointment, I lack the authority to act openly. I understood his desire for a title and territory. Ron, a powerful Golden Lion Knight, lacked a stage for his ambitions. It's a shame, really. He's far too loud to be kept in the wings. He needed a platform to prove his worth. I smiled. Don't worry, Captain. When we reach Thorn City, I will report your contributions to Sir Lucius. You deserve your reward. Ron laughed, delighted. He hugged me. Good. We are friends now, Baron. Too bad our family has no eligible women, or I'd love to be family. I was amused by the sudden warmth. Let's head to Thorn City. Sir Lucius is waiting. Ron nodded, confident. I've already spoken to my uncle, Marquis Marcus, about Count Aldous. I put in a good word for you. You might get a promotion soon. I smiled noncommittally. I instructed Esther to assist Sebastian in managing the territory. I prepared, taking Lynn and Wolfgang, along with elite Black Raven Knights. They joined Ron's Golden Lion Knights. The party left the Obsidian territory, heading for Thorn City. Hoofbeats kicked up dust as they rode. Days passed. I checked my information system and received a purple alert. Count Aldis's family has been punished by Sir Lucius for treason. The Count has been sent to Thorn City to retire. I felt a chill. Lucius was ruthless. He had removed a powerful figure without hesitation. It was a clear warning that Thorn City maintained absolute control over the West. 2 days later, the massive stone walls of Thorn City appeared on the horizon. Ron's excitement was palpable. At the West Gate, guards saw the Golden Lion crest. Recognizing the elite knights, they dared not delay. They cleared the path immediately, letting the group pass without inspection. They entered the bustling city, which was far livelier than before. Soldiers whispered, Golden Lion Knights? Who is that? That young man with white hair. And that werewolf looks familiar. Quiet. Don't cause trouble. I ignored them, while Ron looked proud. They rode straight toward the LaRoche family fortress in the inner city. A massive structure, far grander than the Obsidian territory or Lucerne City, appeared before them. The roaring Golden Lion flag atop the towering spire snapped in the wind, asserting its owner's authority. Ron reined in his horse at the gate. Eli, I'll leave you here to report to the Knight's Order. Thanks for the company. Their days of travel had fostered a casual friendship. I smiled. Good luck, Captain Ron. Ron nodded and addressed the guards in Golden Lion armor. Baron Pendragon, here by Lord Lucius's summons. Report it. He winked at me, then led his knights away. Hearing Baron Pendragon and the summons, the guards dared not delay. One guard ran inside to report. The other bowed to me. Please wait a moment, Baron. I turned to Lynn Aurora, who was staring at the ancient, majestic fortress in a trance. Spectacular, isn't it? I asked. Lynn frowned, murmuring. It is, but Eli, I feel, this place is familiar. Like I've seen it before. I felt a stir but kept my expression light. Perhaps you're a branch of the LaRoche family? Lynn Aurora LaRoche. Sounds good. Remember to protect me. Lynn blushed and playfully punched my arm. Their banter was interrupted by approaching footsteps. A meticulous middle-aged butler arrived with several guards. It's amazing how these people always look like they've spent their entire morning starching their own souls. He bowed to me. Baron Pendragon, welcome to LaRoche Fortress. Lord Lucius has been expecting you. Your horses and attendants will be cared for. He noted. Only 2 may accompany you, Baron. I instructed my Black Raven Knights to wait, then entered the fortress with Lynn and Wolfgang. The interior was dim, with walls adorned in heavy tapestries and trophies. The butler led the way, narrating the history of the items. His tone was thick with family pride. Baron, This portrait depicts our first ancestor, the great Roderick LaRoche, the greatest pioneer in history. These porcelains are from the mysterious eastern kingdom of Laotia, a gift from King Joss a century ago. Such craftsmanship is now nearly extinct. This golden lion armor was bestowed by the late King Hera III for our service against the Western Federation. I offered polite, well-timed affirmations, mostly to keep him from cataloging the silverware. The LaRoche family's glory is truly profound. The butler smiled, pleased. They reached the familiar dark wood doors. The butler gestured. Lord Lucius awaits. I steeled myself. I gave Lynn a reassuring look and pushed open the heavy doors. The study remained unchanged, bathed in light from tall windows. Two figures were inside. Young Duke Constantine LaRoche sat in his father's chair. He studied me with undisguised curiosity, particularly my white hair. Lucius LaRoche, the true power of the West, sat calmly to the side. I stepped forward and bowed. Eli Pendragon, hereby summons. Greetings, Duke Constantine, Sir Lucius. Constantine glanced at his uncle, who remained silent. Clearing his throat to sound authoritative, the Duke smiled. Baron Pendragon, welcome to Thorn. As I straightened, Lucius's flat voice cut through. Eli Pendragon, do you know your crime? I froze, my heart tightening. Lucius's gaze was calm, his tone emotionless. Do you know your crime? The words struck like an icicle. Was it my harsh treatment of Sabuda? My private deal with Ron? My rapid expansion? Constantine looked on, confused. This wasn't the routine inquiry they had discussed. The air in the room grew heavy. I knelt, keeping my composure. Sir, my actions were in service of my duties as a lord of the West. If loyalty to the kingdom and the West is a crime, then I am indeed guilty. Lucius chuckled, breaking the tension. I realized this was a test, a reminder that my life and honor remained in Lucius's hands, and apparently, so did his questionable taste in icebreakers. Condensed into 6633, Constantine rolled his eyes, annoyed by his uncle's dark sense of humor. He had wanted to ask about my white hair. Sit, Lucius commanded. There was no third chair. Constantine realized his uncle wanted him gone. He felt slighted. He had practiced his lines all night, but he dared not disobey. He huffed at Lucius. He stood up, grumbling. He dragged his own heavy chair over to me. Sit. He winked at me and stormed out, leaving a frustrated trail. I twitched, stunned that the future Duke had fetched my chair. I suppose it's one way to ensure I don't wander off. This was entirely unexpected. I stood there, unsure whether to sit. Sit, Lucius repeated. I complied. Despite my growth in strength and status, I still felt a tremor of nerves. Condensed into 6651, Constantine pushed the doors shut behind him. In the hallway, the butler noted the Duke's exit and the waiting Lynn and Wolfgang. Constantine's eyes were immediately drawn to Wolfgang's hulking, lupin form. The young Duke Constantine's curiosity was piqued by Wolfgang, the Wolfkin. As he moved to inspect the man, his butler introduced him as an attendant to Baron Pendragon. I and Wolfgang bowed nervously, but Constantine's gaze drifted to Lynn, his brow furrowing in confusion. He felt a vague, haunting sense of familiarity, as if he had seen her face somewhere before. Under Constantine's unblinking stare, Lynn grew visibly flustered. Sensing her discomfort, Wolfgang stepped forward, using his massive frame to shield her while eyeing Constantine with suspicion. The butler intervened, reminding the young Duke of his scheduled training. Constantine, intrigued rather than annoyed by the Wolfkin's protective stance, finally broke his trance. He nodded to the pair and departed with his butler. Inside the study, I got straight to the point. Sir Lucius, the rebellion in Runestone City and the betrayal by Sabuda Medici have been resolved. Captain Ron Hohenzollern of the Golden Lion Knights is currently managing the city, awaiting your orders. Lucius gestured for a detailed report. I summarized the battle at Windbreath Plains. I emphasized the prowess of the Golden Lion Knights and Ron's leadership, downplaying my own role and attributing the success to reinforcements from Thorn City. Lucius listened in stony silence until I finished, then nodded slowly. You did well, Lucius said. I have severely punished Count Aldous for his involvement. You need not fear retaliation. I feigned ignorance. Count Aldous? I am unaware of his family's involvement. I only acted to quell the rebellion. Lucius smirked at the boy's tact. Regardless, you have earned a reward. However, as an expansion knight from the royal territory with shallow roots, I must consider the sentiments of the Western nobility. If I reward you too lavishly, it will invite unnecessary controversy. Do you understand? Lucius paused, his deep gaze fixed on me to gauge my reaction. I sighed internally. I realized this was a polite way to deny me a foothold in the Western power structure, which was certainly one way to say you're not invited to the cool kids' table. My hopes dampened. I decided to pivot toward requesting practical resources for my territory. I understand your position, Sir Lucius, I replied sincerely. I leave the rewards to your judgment. However, the Obsidian Territory and Lucerne City suffered heavy losses. We require supplies for reconstruction. Could you perhaps? How about a marriage alliance with the West? Lucius interrupted. I froze, stunned by the sudden proposal. A marriage? Sir, you must be joking. I am already married. Lucius remained calm. Married? To my knowledge, you haven't held a formal ceremony. Besides, an alliance with the LaRoche bloodline is an honor many covet. Are you refusing? My mind raced. I admired Lucius's strategy. It was a soft yet effective way to bind me to the West and ensure I remained under Thorn City's influence. If I refused, the LaRoche vassals would surely take offense on their lord's behalf. But my wife, Lynn, was a LaRoche herself, a fact I could not reveal without proof, which made this entire conversation feel like a very high-stakes game of oops. Seeing my struggle, Lucius continued calmly. I have already consulted your father, Marquis Leon Black, through my brother. The Marquis has no objections. I was shocked. Lucius had even secured my father's approval. Was I truly being groomed for favor, or was I just a convenient pawn being moved across a board I didn't even know I was playing on? Feeling cornered, I tried to stall. Sir Lucius, I am but a minor baron. I dare not aspire to such a noble bloodline. May I have time to consider? Yes or no? Lucius demanded. Feeling the immense pressure, I chose to buy time. The request is sudden. Please, give me 1 day. I will provide an answer tomorrow. Lucius nodded, and I retreated toward the door, a plan forming. I pushed the door open, leaving it slightly ajar. I positioned myself to ensure Lucius could see Lynn standing outside. Lynn, I said, loud enough for the room to hear. This is the wise and brilliant administrator of the West, Sir Lucius LaRoche. Confused but obedient, Lynn bowed toward the room. She looked toward the great man, but Lucius was staring out the window, seemingly lost in thought. I felt my plan failing. Just as I prepared to close the door, Lucius reacted to the sound or the gaze. Sir Lucius turned around. His eyes locked onto the girl at the door. The moment their eyes met, Lucius's composure shattered. His pupils dilated, and his usually stoic face filled with sheer disbelief. He stared at Lynn as if seeing a ghost. Lynn, Lucius whispered, his eyes dazed and unfocused. 10 years ago, while serving in the royal capital Orlandia, he had spent much time with his grandniece, who possessed the royal silver hair and a lively spirit. Her laughter and tears had brought warmth to his cold political life. Though this face was hardened by time, the features and that striking white hair were an 80% match to the Princess Lynn of his memories. I, hearing the whisper, introduced her. Lynn? Sir Lucius, you must be mistaken. This is my wife, Lynn. Lynn blushed at the title, pinching my arm in embarrassment, while I maintained a stoic facade. Lynn stepped forward and bowed. Lynn greets Sir Lucius. Lucius did not respond. His gaze locked onto her, making Lynn deeply uncomfortable. Why was he looking at her like that? I raised my voice. Sir Lucius? The call snapped Lucius out of his trance. He took a sharp breath, his shock replaced by a complex, turbulent emotion. He hurried from behind his desk and grasped Lynn's shoulders. Child, he rasped, what is your name? Tell me your full name. Lynn, startled, replied, Sir, I am Lynn. No, Lucius blurted out, then caught himself, his brow furrowing in deep distress. I interjected, feigning confusion. Sir Lucius, she is indeed Lynn, my wife. Is there a problem? Lucius rubbed his temples, struggling to regain his composure against the overwhelming shock. Lucius regained his composure, though his rapid speech betrayed his inner turmoil. Child, may I see your left hand? Lynn Aurora looked to me, and I nodded in encouragement. She hesitantly held out her left hand, palm up. Lucius focused intently on the base of her index and middle fingers. He remembered it clearly. 10 years ago in the royal capital, he had been tasked with watching young Lin. Due to his negligence, he left a fruit knife out. Curious, young Lin had tried to mimic the adults and accidentally cut her finger. The wound wasn't deep, but the bleeding terrified the child, causing her to wail. His niece had scolded him severely afterward for his incompetence in childcare. He remembered the exact location of that scar. Apparently, he was a man who never forgot a mistake, which probably explains why he was so miserable. His eyes locked onto the side of Lin's index finger. There was indeed a mark. It was incredibly faint, nearly faded by time. Yet, it was undeniably there, the exact same position. Could such a coincidence truly exist? The identical features, the same hair color. And now the identical scar? Lucius wondered if he were trapped in a bizarre dream. To verify, he punched my shoulder. Ugh! I recoiled in surprise. Lord Lucius, what are you doing? Lin frowned, her tone defensive. Lord Lucius. Despite his status, she wouldn't tolerate him striking me. Lucius ignored them. The physical sensation was real. This was no hallucination. I suppose being assaulted is one way to confirm reality, though I'd have preferred a pinch. He took a deep breath, his gaze returning to Lin with complex, overwhelming emotion. Are you certain she is your wife? How did you meet? I replied with a wry smile. Yes, Lord Lucius. It is true. We first met in Thorn City. She had lost her memory, and I lost her memory. The pieces clicked for Lucius. He looked at Lin with warmth and excitement. Lin, child, look at me. Do you truly remember nothing of who I am or your past? Lin, still reeling from her own audacity in scolding a ruler of the western border, froze. At his words, her eyes lit up. She grabbed his arm, forgetting all etiquette. Lord Lucius, you know me. I can't remember anything. Who was I? Where did I come from? Seeing her desperate confusion, Lucius's last doubts vanished. So, she had lost her memory. A wave of pity and responsibility washed over him, followed by a moment of hesitation. Looking into her expectant eyes, he sighed. There was no point in hiding the truth. She had a right to know her identity. You, Lucius said solemnly, taking her hand. Your name is not Ella. You are Lin Aurora. Lin Aurora held her breath, staring at Lucius. Your mother was the beloved daughter of Duke Federico LaRoche of the West, he said. And your father is King August Aurora of the Orlando Kingdom. Lin stood frozen, her eyes wide, unable to process the revelation. Her father was the king? Her grandfather, the Duke of the West? The sheer magnitude of the information hit her like a tidal wave, paralyzing her thoughts. My jaw dropped in shock, and even Wolfgang, who had been silently lurking by the door, was stunned. Wolfgang's furry wolf ears stood bolt upright, his large eyes filled with disbelief as he remained rooted to the spot. A strange silence descended upon the room. After a few seconds, I finally found my voice, my tone laced with profound astonishment. Sir Lucius, do you mean that Ella is actually the princess? Her Highness, Lin Aurora? Lucius nodded calmly, confirming the earth-shattering truth. He kept his gaze fixed on me, sharply observing every flicker of emotion on my face. He saw only pure shock and confusion. There was no calculation or pretense, only the genuine reaction of someone blindsided by the truth. Lucius felt a bitter, complex smile touch his lips. A man of politics, he rarely believed in coincidences, yet here was I, a frontier lord from the capital. That I had found the amnesiac princess in Thorn and become her partner by pure chance. Was this truly the work of the gods, or a cruel joke of fate? I suppose the gods just have a really twisted sense of humor. No matter. He turned his gaze back to the still-dazed Lin, his eyes filled with a guardian's affection and guilt. He reached out and pulled the girl into his arms. I am your uncle. Lin, my child, welcome home. His voice trembled slightly, betraying long-suppressed emotions finally breaking through. Watching this, my guarded expression softened into something complex and gentle. I knew that from this moment on, everything had changed. In the elegant dining room, the heavy atmosphere of the study had vanished. The long table was covered in a white cloth and laden with exquisite, aromatic dishes. Golden roasted poultry, tender ribs in rich sauce, and fluffy pastries. A stark contrast to the Obsidian Territory's usual fare of black bread, dried meat, and soup. Accustomed to simple rations, the two finally enjoyed a long-missed feast. Lin ate with refined restraint. I, however, was far more relaxed. The delicious food whetted my appetite, and I ate heartily, acting as if I were truly at home. Seeing this, Lin kicked me gently under the table, signaling me to mind my manners. I paused, then turned to her with a respectful, mocking bow. "At your service, Your Highness?" Lin rolled her eyes at my teasing. She leaned in close, whispering in a voice only I could hear, her tone a mix of reproach and sincerity. "No matter who I am, I will always be your Ella." The simple, heartfelt words caused even the thick-skinned me to blush, a warm, indescribable sensation flooding my heart. Apparently, I have the emotional fortitude of a damp paper towel. I rubbed my nose and gave a silly grin, though I quieted my behavior significantly. Just then, the door opened, and Sir Lucius entered, carrying several bottles of expensive red wine. Clearly intending to celebrate this unexpected reunion, he waved off their attempts to stand and offer formalities. He handed a bottle to me. I accepted it resignedly, well aware of my lower status, and took on the role of server. I poured the wine into the crystal glasses for Lucius and Lin. Lin giggled at my obedient demeanor. Lucius swirled his glass, observed the legs of the wine, inhaled the bouquet, and took a small, appreciative sip. I introduced a rare, unique-tasting wine from the Midsummer Islands to the two young guests. They both took a sip as instructed. The taste was unexpectedly tart and bitter. Yet, the aftertaste was uniquely sweet and fruity. Lin grimaced. "It's bitter." Lucius laughed heartily at her candor. The dinner proceeded warmly, with Lucius avoiding heavy topics like the previously proposed marriage. I realized this was for the best. I had already forged a stronger bond with the LaRoche family than any contract could provide. After the meal, Lucius turned serious. "Lin, your return is a blessing, but the Orlando Kingdom is in turmoil, and the capital is treacherous." He sighed. "I am unsure how to handle your return. Revealing your identity too soon could put you in grave danger. I have sent an encrypted raven to your grandfather, the Prime Minister, confirming your safety. Now, tell me, do you wish to return to the capital?" Lin shook her head. "No, uncle. I have only vague memories of the capital. I am happy here." Lucius nodded in agreement. "That is wise. Your brother Aiden and the capital's ministers may not welcome your return." Lin looked saddened, sensing the complex web of blood ties despite her memory loss. I stood up and vowed to Lucius, "My lord, rest assured. I will protect Lin with my life." Lucius watched me with a deep, unreadable gaze. Ignoring the vow, he continued, "Lin will remain in Thorn City for now. I will announce her as a long-lost collateral branch of the LaRoche family, recently recovered from the chaos of war." He then turned to me. "As for you, your service and relationship with Lin will be noted. If you prove your loyalty and worth, I will handle your marriage matters and grant them the recognition they deserve." I felt a pang of frustration at the political maneuvering, while Lin protested, "Uncle." Lucius smiled gently. "I am considering your long-term future. Your barren title was my doing. Without sufficient merit, a higher status would only invite trouble for you, Lin, and the West." I nodded, accepting the reality. Lucius then paused, looking uncertain, as if he were about to ask me for a loan rather than discuss my life. "Lin, you two have no offspring yet, do you?" The question was so intimate that Lin blushed deeply. She whispered, "No, we don't." Lucius sighed in relief, explaining, "Do not be offended. The LaRoche bloodline is rare and fragile. Every descendant is precious. I only needed to verify." He shot me a meaningful look. I understood the implied warning. Do not let personal matters or illegitimate heirs complicate the succession. I responded firmly, "My lord, I love only Lin. She is my only wife, and our heirs will be our own." Lucius was surprised by my directness, but satisfied. Suddenly, a loud, urgent knocking echoed through the room. Marquis Marcus's voice came from outside, filled with panic. "Sir, Lucius, urgent news from the capital." Lucius's warmth vanished, replaced by his cold, administrative mask. He stood abruptly. "Come with me." He strode toward the door. I followed, sensing a monumental shift. The three moved to the study. Marcus frowned upon seeing me. "Why is he here?" Lucius gestured. Let him stay. Marcus complied, trusting Lucius. He turned grave. Sir, urgent news from Orlandia? He paused. King August Aurora is confirmed dead. Lucius's eyes flickered with shock. He rubbed his temples. Why now, just as Lynn returned? I was stunned. A king's death? Apparently, the universe decided my schedule wasn't quite chaotic enough. Marcus continued. Prince Aidan has ascended as Aidan I. The Duke is now regent, and Marquis Graham is the new prime minister. Lucius relaxed slightly, knowing his brother was in control. Marcus added, the regent has issued orders. Representatives from every territory must reach Orlandia within a fortnight for the Grand Council to witness the coronation and swear fealty. Furthermore, the Duke will face former Prime Minister Khans Montauban in a trial by combat to determine who is the true regicide. A trial by combat. Lucius sighed. Why go to such lengths? Marcus shrugged. The capital is complex. Perhaps the Duke needs this to silence the public. With Boss there, it should be fine. The old man has no choice. Graham is the only titled knight in the royal territory. Lucius shook his head. No, Marcus, I know Khans Montauban. He is ruthless and patient. He won't go down without a fight. This trial won't be simple. Marcus nodded, then changed the subject. I shall go to the capital for the council. You stay here to manage the west. Lucius agreed, then looked toward the west. Once you return, Marcus, we can wait no longer. Marcus's eyes lit up with battle lust. You mean? Retake Storm City and rebuild the defense line. Marcus laughed. I have waited so long for this. I listened intently, fully adopting my role as a loyalist of the West, though I'm mostly just here for the inevitable property damage. My lords, besides the campaign, there is something we can prepare now. Oh, Marcus looked at me. Speak carefully, boy, or face the consequences. He still viewed me with the condescension typical of an old-school noble toward a rising upstart. I merely smiled, unfazed by his attitude. Given the kingdom's turmoil, we cannot allow the expansion knights sent to the west to leave. We should petition the regent for an order under the guise of securing western defenses for future conflicts. All expansion knights and their forces currently in the west are forbidden from leaving without the western governor's approval, under penalty of being branded deserters or traitors. Marcus was initially puzzled, then thoughtful. While many expansion knights were once cast-offs, recent investments by major families, spurred by Lucius and Federico, had changed that. Keeping them here would provide leverage against their respective houses. He looked at Lucius, stunned by the man's terrifying foresight in accounting for such details. Lucius nodded approvingly at me. A clever move. If used correctly, it will be quite effective. I will include this in my recommendation to my brother under your name. Now, Lucius waved his hand. Marcus, draft a list of representatives for the royal capital's Grand Council for my review. Ensure it reflects our sincerity and respect for the new king. Marcus accepted the order. Lucius turned to me. Eli, go look after Constantine. The boy has been slacking in his training. Supervise him for me. My mouth twitched at the prospect of babysitting, while Marcus roared with laughter and clapped me on the shoulder. Apparently, my professional career had officially peaked at glorified nanny. Haha. Good luck, lad. That's a heavy responsibility. Marcus then strode out to draft the list. Left alone, Lucius dismissed me with a wave. I bowed and left, feeling conflicted. Meanwhile, in the depths of the dungeon in Orlandia, Marquis Khans Montauban sat in his cell. Federico had granted him the dignity of a bed and desk, unlike the straw-filled pits of other prisoners. Khans sat emotionless, staring at the stone wall, mentally replaying his failed political gambit. A rhythmic, light footfall approached. Khans looked up to see a hooded figure, who then revealed the face of Bernard, the Minister of Intelligence. Bernard, Khans asked, surprised. How did you get in? Bernard smiled thinly. Khans, everyone has a price. Khans stared at him. Tell me, was it you? Bernard feigned confusion. My lord, what are you talking about? Khans searched his eyes for any sign of deception. Bernard's expression remained perfectly, insincerely blank. Khans sighed, looking away. It no longer mattered if it was him or not. Bernard, Khans said wearily, do me one last favor. Bernard bowed respectfully. Anything within my power. Protect Cain and the Montauban family, for the sake of our years as teacher and student. Bernard looked troubled. My lord, I am but a minister of intelligence. In the capital's treacherous waters, I can barely protect myself. Cons glared coldly. Spare me the act. Give me paper and pen. Bernard produced a scroll and quill from his sleeve. Cons smiled bitterly at the prepared items. He had no other choice. Apparently, the man keeps stationery in his robes just in case someone decides to die on short notice. He quickly scribbled a list of names and notes, then rolled it up. These are people who still owe the Montauban family favors. How you use them is up to your skill. Remember your promise. Ensure the survival of the Montauban family. Of course, my lord. Bernard reached greedily for the scroll. Cons pulled back, his gaze sharp. Swear by the gods. Swear you will protect Cain and the family bloodline. Bernard's expression turned solemn as he raised his right hand. I, Bernard, swear by the gods to protect Cain Montauban and preserve the family bloodline. If I break this oath, may my own bloodline be severed and I be damned to hell. Cons finally seemed satisfied. He handed the scroll, containing his final political legacy, through the bars. Bernard snatched it and hid it away, a suppressed smile on his face. Just as Cons prepared for his end, Bernard leaned in closer. Dear teacher, are you truly content with such a humiliating end? Do you not want revenge on Federico? Perhaps I have a way. The next day, sunlight bathed the training grounds of La Roche Fortress. I watched the future Duke of the West looking at me with wide, expectant eyes. Baron Eli, Constantine whined. My teacher, Sir Fowles, is away. Training alone is boring. Can I have a 30-minute break? I found the boy's plea amusing. I sighed, feigning sternness. 30 minutes? Your entire session is only an hour. Constantine's face fell, so I relented with a smile. Fine. 20 minutes. The boy's eyes lit up. The butler watching from afar shook his head helplessly. As the late-born son of Duke Federico, Constantine was seen as a divine gift. The family loved him dearly but demanded excellence, especially in combat and academics. Now relieved, Constantine looked at me with curiosity. Baron Eli, everyone says you've done great things for the West. That's amazing. I sat beside him. When you grow up, you will surely achieve even greater things than your father and uncle. Constantine scoffed at the familiar platitudes. Same old lines. Father, uncle, and my tutor all say the same thing, as if I exist only to grow up. I paused, struck by the childish complaint. Apparently, I'd officially reached the age where I sounded like a greeting card. When had I become one of those adults, viewing everything through a lens of calculation? I had changed. Constantine's mood shifted quickly. He soon forgot his frustration, his attention shifting to my hair. Baron Eli, why is your hair white? It was black last time we met. Are you sick, or did you practice some intense breathing technique? I didn't answer directly. Looking into the boy's vibrant eyes, I felt a sudden impulse. Little Duke, resting is boring. How about a spar? Constantine jumped up, eyes gleaming. Yes, I'm sick of hitting wooden posts. He ran to the weapon rack. Baron Eli, if you win, you can take any weapon here. The butler hesitated. The rack held fine equipment, some once used by the Duke and Lucius LaRoche. But he reasoned that I, a known fop from the capital, would likely lose, which might boost the young Duke's confidence. He stayed silent. I picked up a plain wooden sword, testing its weight. Constantine chose his own. Striking a pose, he boasted, I won't go easy on you. I can take 10 guards at once. He charged, delivering a heavy, standard, yet wide-open downward strike. I chuckled, sidestepping like a willow leaf. I thrust my sword toward Constantine's exposed flank. Constantine scrambled to parry. Clack! The impact surprised me. The boy had immense strength. The LaRoche bloodline was potent. However, his technique was lacking. I flicked my wrist, disengaged, hooked Constantine's ankle, and gave his backside a light kick. Constantine stumbled, landing hard on his rear, his sword flying away. The butler moved to intervene, shocked by the disrespect shown to the future Duke. Seeing Constantine's lack of anger and newfound focus, the butler retreated. Cheater, you're just taller. Again, Constantine yelled, charging back in. I smiled, ready to guide him, or at least teach him that gravity is a very real thing. Constantine had solid, orthodox knight training, and raw power. But he lacked combat experience. His moves were too predictable. I slowed down, feeding him openings. I parried and dodged just enough to keep the boy hopeful. I guided Constantine to think and adapt. The boy had never enjoyed a spar like this. Usually, guards just defended, or fouls crushed him instantly. I was the first to let him fight, while highlighting his progress and mistakes. As Constantine grew winded, I taunted, "Is this all the effort you have for the western border?" The provocation worked. "I'm furious," Constantine roared, attacking again. After more sparring, I decided the boy had reached his limit. I feigned a stumble, exposing a massive opening. Constantine lunged. At the last second, I twisted my body. I slid my sword along Constantine's and tapped the boy's chest. I tripped him again. Ugh! Constantine fell flat on his back. Panting, he couldn't get up, but his eyes shone with excitement. "Baron Eli, you're good. I've beaten every guard in La Roche Castle. Tomorrow. I'll beat you tomorrow." I reached out a hand. Constantine grabbed it and pulled himself up. The butler rushed over. "My duke, are you hurt?" "I'm fine." That was better than hitting posts. Constantine waved at the rack. "You won, Baron. Take your pick." I sighed, playing along, though I'd have preferred a nap to a sword. "You have incredible talent, little duke. I barely survived that." "Then I accept your generosity." The flattery pleased Constantine. He laughed, convinced he'd only narrowly lost. "Tomorrow, I'll definitely win." I scanned the rack. My eyes landed on a beautifully maintained recurve bow. It was crafted from superior materials, decorated with silver and gold. I picked it up. It felt perfect. The butler looked concerned. "Baron, that was Sir Lucius's favorite bow." Constantine, eager to spite his uncle, encouraged him. "Take it. It's just gathering dust anyway. Show me how you shoot." I didn't refuse. I drew 3 training arrows, my stance fluid and rhythmic. Thwip, thwip, thwip. The sounds overlapped. 3 arrows pierced the center of 3 targets 100 meters away. Silence followed. Constantine and the butler stared in shock. "Wow, that's cooler than swords. Baron Eli, please, teach me archery." He grabbed my arm, eyes sparkling with hero worship. The defeat was forgotten. Meanwhile, a figure watched from the shadows of a nearby pillar. Marquis Marcus Hohenzollern watched the final archery demonstration, his expression betraying a flicker of genuine shock at the stunning display. He had only stopped by to observe how I was handling the young duke, never expecting such a performance. This Eli Black was proving to be quite interesting, or at least, I was proving to be a very expensive distraction. The next day, at the training grounds. Relax your shoulders, don't tense up, align your eye, the sight, and the target. Slow your breathing, don't hold it. Release naturally. I stood behind young Duke Cons Montauban, patiently coaching his archery form. Unable to resist the young Duke's persistence, and with Sir Lucius Laroche's tacit approval, I had accepted the role of temporary archery instructor. Cons practiced with intense focus, his small face taut as he mimicked my movements. Though still stiff, he had improved significantly. Whoosh! The arrow struck the target. Cons beamed. "I did it." The steward cheered. "A genius, my lord." I was surprised by the quick progress and jokingly attributed it to my own teaching talent. Suddenly, a guard arrived and bowed. Cons glanced at him. "What is it, loser?" The guard's eye twitched. "My lord, Sir Lucius requests your presence in the study immediately, Baron Pendragon." Cons pouted. "Again? I haven't finished practicing." I chuckled and ruffled the boy's golden hair. The steward frowned, shocked at my audacity in touching the lion's head. Apparently, the lion's mane is strictly off-limits to commoners. "That's enough for today. You need to practice on your own to build muscle memory. Train hard. I'll be checking when I return." I then followed the guard toward the main fortress. Inside the study, Sir Lucius sat behind his desk, buried in paperwork. Without looking up, he gestured for me to sit. I complied and waited in silence. Lucius finished his final document and set it aside. He looked up, his gaze calm. "Marquis Marcus departs for the royal capital tomorrow morning. You will accompany me to see him off." I nodded. Lucius continued. "I'm done waiting for my brother's formal orders. I am summoning the major pioneer lords to Thorn. I'll issue an emergency decree. They must arrive within 10 days for a meeting. I will announce restrictions on pioneer lords leaving the western border and outline plans to reclaim lost territory. You will support me, either by seconding my motions or proposing suggestions that align with my intent. Use your judgment. Combined with 6981, my mouth twitched. I was being recruited as a political plant to sway the other lords. It was a bold request, but I felt little resentment. Since confirming Lynn Aurora's identity, the distance between me and Lucius had narrowed. As you command, Sir Lucius, I replied. I then added, regarding Runestone City, Captain Ron Hohenzollern fought bravely and showed great leadership. Perhaps, Lucius had already considered this. Some frontier territories are isolated and hard to reach. I've already sent him with Golden Lion Knights to summon those lords. Once he returns to Thorn, his appointment as Baron of Runestone City will be finalized. I was surprised. Lucius sharing such sensitive personnel information was a sign of immense trust. I was no longer an outsider to be guarded against. I was, in some sense, one of them. I understand, I replied. As I turned to leave, Lucius stopped me. Lucius looked back at his papers, his tone casual. Pour me some tea from that cabinet. I'm thirsty. I sighed internally. I was getting used to the eccentric demands of the Western administrator. I walked to the mahogany cabinet. I opened the canister, revealing high-quality, fragrant dark tea leaves. I placed a pinch into a white porcelain cup and poured hot water from a silver kettle. The tea turned a clear amber. As I turned to serve Lucius, my eyes lingered on the open canister. I flicked my pinky, accidentally, knocking the canister over. Oops. The canister tipped, spilling precious leaves. I hurriedly set the cup down. I righted the canister and scooped up the spilled tea. In the process, I deftly palmed a portion of the leaves and slipped them into my pocket. It's amazing how much more fragrant tea becomes when you're stealing it. I finished cleaning up, then brought the tea to Lucius. Your tea, my lord. Lucius responded without looking up. I bowed and exited the study. Lucius worked for a while longer before rubbing his temples in fatigue. He picked up the now lukewarm tea and took a sip. His brow furrowed instantly. Puffed. He spat the tea out, his face twisted in disgust. Terrible, he muttered. Wrong temperature, wrong technique. A complete waste of good leaves. He wiped his mouth, looking at the murky liquid with a wry smile. After a moment of silence, he picked up the cup again and took another sip. He let the unpleasant taste linger, as if savoring something else entirely. He finished the cup in silence. Meanwhile, I had returned to the training grounds. Under the sun, I looked perfectly normal, smiling as I coached the young Duke. Steady release. The arrow flew toward the target. That night, in the guest quarters of La Roche Fortress, exhausted from a long day of coaching and dealing with Lucius, I felt the weight of the day, mostly in the form of a persistent, throbbing headache. I washed up and prepared for bed. Just as I reached the bedside, the door clicked. I turned, alert, as the door creaked open. A slender, familiar figure slipped inside like a nimble cat. Lynn Aurora slipped into the room, pressing a finger to her lips. Her face was a mix of mischief and nerves as she rushed to me, burying her face in my chest and wrapping her arms tightly around my waist. Eli, I missed you, she murmured, her voice muffled. I'm not used to sleeping in such a large room alone. Her warmth and soft words instantly washed away my exhaustion. I scooped her up into my arms. Lynn gasped softly, clutching my neck as I carried her to the bed and laid her down gently. I leaned over, brushing her flushed cheek with my fingers, my eyes filled with playful affection. So, the noble princess has graced me with her presence tonight. Shall I serve you well? Lynn blushed like a ripe peach, her lashes fluttering as she gave a faint, whispered, yes. Soon, soft sighs filled the room, and I felt the moonlight outside was unusually bright and gentle. The next morning, rhythmic knocking woke me. It's amazing how the world insists on starting the day with such aggressive enthusiasm. I opened my eyes, reaching out to find the space beside me empty. Lynn had already left. Baron Pendragon, are you awake? I am here by Sir Lucius's order to assist you. A servant called from outside. I shook off my sleepiness and invited them in. Two servants entered, carrying formal, luxurious attire. With their help, I struggled into the elaborate outfit intended for a major occasion. Once ready, I followed the servant toward the main gate of the La Roche Fortress. Before arriving, I heard the roar of crowds and horses. The massive gates were wide open, and the square was packed. Dozens of gorgeously dressed nobles and their entourages stood in small groups, whispering. Knights stood in formation on both sides of the square. They wore gleaming armor engraved with various family crests, all radiating a fierce aura. Horses snorted, exhaling white mist into the air, adding to the solemnity. Sir Lucius was conversing with an older, composed noble in the center. Spotting me, Lucius beckoned me over. Marquis Claude, you likely know Baron Eli Black of Pendragon. He recently eliminated a major threat in the west, rendering great service. Marquis Claude looked confused. A baron? A great service? He searched his memory of the Orlando Kingdom's nobility. He didn't recognize the Pendragon name, but out of respect for Lucius, he maintained his composure and nodded politely. A pleasure, Baron Pendragon. I bowed respectfully. Sir Lucius, Marquis Claude. Lucius continued. The responsibility of representing the West at the royal capital's Grand Council and swearing fealty falls to Marquis Claude and Marquis Hohenzollern. You must demonstrate the West's honor and resolve. Marquis Claude replied solemnly. Rest assured, my family is united. Once at the capital, I will follow the orders of the Duke, or rather, the Regent. He spoke with pride. Sir Lucius, the West has reached the pinnacle of the kingdom. The Duke of the West serving as Regent. What an honor. It's unprecedented in Orlando's history. Lucius smiled and nodded, but I noticed his hand clench into a tight fist behind his back, a subtle detail that suggested he was having a lovely time. Soon, Marquis Marcus Hohenzollern approached with a booming laugh. He wore magnificent armor and a deep blue cloak, looking imposing. Sir Lucius, Claude, time to begin. Marcus shouted to the square. Men of the West, prepare yourselves. I wondered what they were preparing for. A deep, ancient horn blast shattered the morning silence. It was a clear signal. Musicians around the square began to play. Drums, horns, bagpipes, and harps blending together. The music quickly synchronized into a powerful, unfamiliar melody. It was stirring, filled with the clashing of steel and the triumph of victory. It made my heart race. Marcus, at the front, looked ecstatic as he heard the tune. He began a powerful, ancient dance, his movements mimicking a lion's strike and a galloping warhorse. Every heavy stomp matched the drumbeats perfectly. Soon, every noble, knight, soldier, and citizen in the square joined in. It was as if a collective blood memory had been awakened. Who? Huh? The men roared in unison, their movements wild and powerful. The square felt like an ancient altar, hosting a fanatical pre-battle ritual. I felt my own blood ignite, my heart pounding with an indescribable thrill. Marquis Claude watched with nostalgia. A sight to behold. This is the La Roche victory dance from the family's ancestors, performed before battle or upon return to pray for victory. The horns sounded again, and the dancing stopped instantly. Everyone knelt, heads bowed toward the fortress gate. The square fell silent, save for the roaring golden lion flag snapping in the wind. I hurriedly knelt with the others. An old butler appeared beside Lucius, holding a great sword adorned with the roaring golden lion crest. Lucius solemnly accepted the ancestral sword of the La Roche family and handed it to the kneeling Marquis Marcus. Marcus rose, brandished the blade, and roared, La Roche. The crowd erupted in a frenzy. La Roche. Supreme force. Ultimate authority. The cheers surged like a tidal wave, filling the square with fanatical loyalty and pride. I knelt among them, stunned by the spectacle. I watched the proud Western nobles worship the name La Roche like devout believers. The La Roche family, the uncrowned kings of the West for a millennium, had their glory deeply etched into the souls of every Westerner. I felt a fire ignite within me, the desire for such supreme force and authority. A man should aspire to such heights, or at least aspire to have a crowd that doesn't scream quite so loudly in his ear. Days passed in Thorn City amidst tense preparations and hidden undercurrents. Leveraging my close ties with Sir Lucius and Lynn's persistent pestering, I gained personal permission to access the La Roche family's vast library. Eager for knowledge, I spent every spare moment immersed in the archives. The library was filled with towering shelves and the scent of aged paper and ink. I focused my research on the Western Federation. My urgency was sparked by a purple-tier intelligence report from my system. The Wanlu city-state, occupying Storm City, has learned of the Orlando Kingdom's internal instability and has issued an emergency mobilization order to other Federation forces. I realized the enemy would exploit the kingdom's power transition. I pored over ancient scrolls to map the complex, loose alliance. The Western Federation Alliance was not a unified state, but a military-political coalition of 7 major federations, including Wanlu, Valeria, and Hofgard, and 12 smaller ones. Wanlu, known for its abundant water resources, led the alliance and initiated the mobilization. However, a geographical barrier caught my attention, the Set Desert. Known as the Traveler's Sigh, this vast, treacherous wasteland stood between the West and the Federation. With extreme temperatures and scarce water, it was a death trap for any ill-prepared army. Some authors even called it the Land of Twilight, or the Uncrossable. Crossing it required immense cost and time. It served as a natural buffer, theoretically preventing large-scale military incursions. This deepened my confusion. How did the Federation coalition cross this barrier a year ago? Exhausted and undersupplied after such a trek, how did they manage to crush the formidable Storm City so quickly? It was a military miracle. Having witnessed the LaRoche family's martial spirit, I was certain the Storm City garrison shouldn't have fallen so easily. The only explanation was internal betrayal. Was it a traitor, a command failure, or high-level political sabotage? Yet, there had been no public purge or investigation following the city's fall. Was it impossible to uncover, or were the conspirators too powerful for even Lucius to touch? I shook off these unsettling thoughts. My priority was to understand the enemy and prepare for the coming reclamation. I closed a detailed treatise on the Western Federation's military characteristics. Deciding to borrow the books, I approached the library exit. A gaunt old man sat in a large chair by the desk, wearing a gray hooded robe. He was the sole librarian. "Hey, Weiss, I'm taking these. Register them." The old man, Weiss, let out a wheezing, raspy chuckle from under his hood. It sounded less like a laugh and more like a radiator finally giving up the ghost. "Ha, the sweet-talking little sparrow is here again." I recalled how I once thought this man was a hidden master, only to learn the truth. I had learned from the Duke and the butler that Weiss was merely a member of a fallen branch of the LaRoche family. With nowhere else to go, he was assigned to guard the library due to his literacy and age. His only real trait was his unusual longevity. "I'm leaving, old man." "Register them properly," I said impatiently. Weiss chuckled again. "Haha. May the forest bless you. Reading is good. Come back often." He slowly and shakily recorded the titles in a thick ledger. I worried the man might stop breathing at any moment. "Hope you're still alive next time," I muttered, leaving the gloomy library. Weiss watched me go with a warm, knowing smile. "Haha. What was the name of the last sweet-talking sparrow?" "Oh, right." Back in the main corridor, I pondered my next move. A guard approached, looking urgent. "Baron Pendragon, a man named Clark Graham is here. He says he's from the Obsidian Territory and has urgent news." "Clark?" My heart tightened. Why would he leave the Obsidian Territory? Was something wrong? Panic surged. "Lead the way," I commanded, rushing toward the gate. They hurried through the complex corridors and exited the fortress. The afternoon sun blinded me for a moment before I spotted the familiar figure.